Hello, everybody. Dang, my voice is still messed up. We are live. I am sorry for the delay, but as usual, life sometimes happens to adults. So, there we go. I told y'all, family, if y'all have sent more positive energy, he'd have got here earlier. So, this is half on him and half on us. But we gonna get started. Sir, can you tell us your name and how you're connected? Because I know everybody's curious about the title, as am I.
Right, right. Well, my name is Michael Bossier. I just go by the name of Michael now. But my connection goes back to the mid '80s. I started out with the organization at the time. They were known as the Anti-Rule Law Community. I moved in to the Anti-Rule Law Community in New York, pretty much fresh out of high school. I spent time as far as community-wise with the organization. I lived in the two New York communities, Brooklyn and Spring Valley. I also spent some time in the Philadelphia community, and I helped start, or was one of the first members as far as the Miami community with a brother Kedar out of Washington, D.C. So my origin goes back to the time period then. I officially left the organization in about 09, 2010. As far as the later years when the organization transitioned into the different schools of thought, when we went into being Nubian Hebrews, and then when we left the Nubian Hebrew school into the School of Right Knowledge, and then into Nuapo and kind of where it is. I left in the beginning stages of where it's at now. So I went through all those schools. I got pretty close with Dr. York, worked with him, which I guess I'll discuss that through the night, on a very close and personal level as far as the Masonic lodges and some of the organizations that sprung up later. I was appointed the worshipful master of the southern jurisdiction of the Masonic Lodge back in the early 2000s. Originally born and raised in New York. That's how I became introduced to the organization. They had a store on Parsons and 179th Street in Jamaica, Queens. And actually the two brothers that ran that store, a brother named Yashar and Bashar. And Bashar was the one who actually gave my Islamic Shahada and actually was one of my first mentors and bring me into the community. And pretty much up until that point, when you have some questions, I'll go through some stuff. I worked on York's case. I was visiting him in prison up until late 2010, early 2011 was the last time I actually spoke with him face to face. But had many visits with him as far as the legal side and the legal situation, which, I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. And I'm sure you got some questions about that.
We have questions on both.
Yeah.
We were talking about York from a historical and Polight from a scam, and then, this new thing came up. So your connection with Polight would be the connection that he had with York, correct? In the various them having.
Yeah, let me clarify that. There's a lot of misconceptions with Polight. I clarified this a few nights ago on Sonetta. I was actually part of that whole situation with Polight. This was around 07, 08. I know there's a lot of members saying that Dr. York doesn't know Polight, never met him, has no knowledge of his existence. Completely untrue. The whole beef that went down that they were recently talking about, the sister that's been on Moorish World TV, the incident she's talking about is correct. And I want to make it clear, I don't really know her on a personal level. So I'm only speaking on what she was talking about, the Polight situation. She was correct. There was a lot of beef going on and there was a shootout. But the whole connection with that, I want to make this clear. Dr. York is 100% fully aware of who Polight is. And I'm going to tell you why. I got letters. I have stacks of letters also during that time period, in addition to going to many visits in that 2.5, 3 year period, where he addresses Polight. Polight also. Polight knows very well who I am, and he has many letters, and he had many written communications back and forth with Dr. York. What happened is, as he started to grow through the ranks, a sister named Patricia Lewis, who most people know as Zakina, was kind of one of the influential people that brought him into the organization. But what happens is, when you have a lot of older heads around, jealousy arises, and Polight being, somebody who came later years after the fact, after York was incarcerated, obviously there's a lot of envy and jealousy, because there's money games going on. And at that time, Patricia Lewis, aka Zakina, she was running the Brooklyn bookstore on Bushwick Avenue. So as Polight developed his relationship with Dr. York, and Polight was also very close with Dr. York's brother, Obar. They opened a store on Bedford Avenue in Brooklyn together after Polight was ousted in that whole Bushwick thing that went down, which I'm about to explain. Mm-hmm. Dr. York appointed and wanted Polight to take over the Brooklyn bookstore. That's fact. I got letters to prove it. And I was told face to face in a personal visit with York. Okay. They resisted Polight going in there and taking over that store. When I say they, I'm talking about Patricia Lewis, aka Zakina, and the people that were aligned with Zakina. So there was a big beef. They didn't want to turn the store over to Polight. And I'm not defending anybody. I'm just going to tell it how it is. I'm not defending Polight. I'm just telling it like it is. But those stories are completely untrue. Now, the beef got very intensified. York also made it clear. This is the one thing that the sister on the Morris World TV does not know, and I have letters too to validate this. York did not want the biological blood family in those buildings and property. The goal was for Polight to go in there and change things around and get it operating and running the way York wanted it. So the beef got intensified. There's a lot of mystery behind the shooting because there was only a select group of people in the store when that happened. So I can't speak exactly how that went down. I've heard a couple of different stories, but the beef got so heated and intensified that it led to that. Well, one thing led to another, and Polight decided to leave. And again, as I said, he was very close with Obar, his brother, Dr. York's brother. They opened a store on Bedford Avenue. Now, I know once Polight traveled to Florence ADX to try to visit Dr. York with Obar. Now, I can't remember. I know Obar got in and spoke. I know Obar is going to see his brother. I'm not sure if Polight got into that visit. I can't remember, but I know he attempted to go visit Dr. York once in Florence, Colorado. And then obviously, the rest of the history with Polight, he basically branched out and did his own thing. So simply, I'm saying, I just want to clarify, a lot of the members that are saying that Dr. York has no idea who Polight is and there's no connection to Polight, he never met him, this and that, completely false. So I just wanted to clarify that, completely false.
Okay. So Venom says, who helped write the books that Polight claimed he wrote?
I know after I stayed in contact before Polight really branched off and started doing his own thing. And again, I'm going between the period of 2007 and 10. I know Polight started getting into the lecture circuit. I know he did a big, the last time I actually physically saw Polight was a function and an event with Dr. Delbert Blair, who I became pretty close with before he passed away. There was an event in Brooklyn. I can't remember where it was. It was in Brooklyn. Polight, based on his research and his information studying the Nuwaubian books and what he was studying, he kind of put his stuff together based on that. As far as Dr. York had no influence in Polight writing his books, if anybody's trying to allude to that, no. One thing we have to just be straight to the point and real. Let's not, regardless if you like Polight or not, obviously the brother has a certain level of intelligence. So he used his certain obvious creative ability, and through his research and study, even coming up with the language he claims almost like Dr. York. But I know he did that based, on his own research. And then there was a group of brothers, obviously at that time, that he was rolling with. He had assistance and help from other people at that time that were around him. But I can't really per se 100% tell you this is exactly, I just know based on at that time what was going on. He was basically putting that stuff together, especially those first series of books he put out shortly after that incident went down. I know, obviously when you look at those books, obviously you can tell some of it was still Nuwaubian inspired when you read the material. But then you kind of see as he started shifting and doing his own thing, he kind of started branching into other areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Flying Monkey Inc. says Polight stated several times that Dr. York named all his kids.
That is true. That is true through letters. Okay, so let me explain something.
Okay.
Because at that time, and still probably to now, Dr. York communicated with a lot of people. Now, I want to clarify something that Leah was saying on the Sarnetta show. When Leah was talking about when you joined the ancient Egyptian order, you would get your, if you were accepted in the order, you would get your packet in the mail, and you would get a 0-time reference card with your spiritual name on it, okay? That really was bullshit because that's just something they really did in the office. You know, the card would say, oh, this was given by the spiritual master, you know, all that spooky stuff. But as far as what Polight was saying, that is correct, because York would communicate with a lot of members through mail at the time, because remember, at that time, his writing privileges were wide open. At that time, he had the ability to communicate with multiple people, including myself. So yes, not just with Polight, he gave many members that came after his incarceration, he gave many members spiritual names through written letters. So that is correct.
Okay, so let me ask you, is it true that Polight actually dated one of York's daughters?
Yes, that is true.
How long did they date for?
Again, I couldn't give you the exact length. I know that was going on in the early stages at that period that I'm talking about. How long that ran to and when it ended, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't around or really associated with him anymore. So I couldn't really tell you.
Okay, let me send Chuck the link again. He said it isn't working. Okay. Okay, and so you said he named Polight's children.
Correct.
So he had 2 at the time?
I believe so. At that period that I'm referring to, at that moment, yes. Pretty sure.
And that would have been Anuket and
correct.
Amunet.
Correct.
So was Amunet a child of a follower of York?
I wouldn't. I would say more so because she was with Polight. I think she more or less got involved because Polight was involved. I wouldn't say that she had anything to do with it prior to that. Obviously, she came along with Polight because she was Polight's mate at the time. So her involvement pretty much stems back at the same time Polight's did.
Okay. Check your email, Chuck. Okay, do we have any more questions in the chat? I done asked 2 on my own.
No, that's all right.
So because it's so much, it's so much to think. Okay, so
yeah.
You say that he was communicating through letters, but we know that his communication was restricted as time went on, more restricted.
Yes.
So it would have been something that he put in a letter to one person and then had them pass it on to somebody else.
Right. Well, I could verify this. There was a period where Polight was getting direct letters from Dr. York. That's fact. And I'm sure if you ask Polight, he would tell you the same thing. I know that for sure. I received a letter and in a face-to-face visit with York that he sent. The reason why I went back to New York, he asked me to go to New York and support the transition of Polight taking over the bookstore. I was there, right around that time that shooting happened, and there was a lot of tension. He had asked me to go because York was aware of some of the resistance that was going on because the communication was still wide open. And he asked me if I could leave Florida, where I'm at now, being from New York, going back for a little bit and support, his wish of having Polight take over the bookstore. Okay. So I know he was getting direct letters from York. Now, you are correct. As time developed, because there was a lot of shit going on where people were writing York and violating, some of the prison policy of what you could and could not write. And then over time, yes, the writing privileges got restricted. Then it was, dumbed down to just a few direct family members, which I believe that's how it is still now. There's only he can only have, I think, 3 or 4 people he can directly communicate to outside of legal. He obviously can get legal counsel. But yes, it did get restricted over time. That is correct. But I do know at that time there was a a pretty good time period where Polight was getting direct letters from Dr. York. That's fact.
Okay. Hey, Chuck. Give me a second. Sometimes there's a.
Yo, hey, how's it going?
Cut your volume up. You sound really low.
All right, go ahead.
What's going on, Chuck?
All is good, Mike. Give me a minute.
I know you're tired, brother. I know you've been ripping and running.
Yes. He says when you are in a federal
Okay, yeah.
no business direction. So how could he state in a letter that Polight could take over the bookstore?
Okay, let me reiterate. First, it was communicated in the direct. There's ways you can communicate things in a non-direct way. Okay, that's not really going to be labeled the changing of currency or funds. There's a way you can give a narrative. You just got to be smart about it. It was communicated to myself and two other people that were in that visit with me at the time, which were Nifu and Sister Robbie. And it was relayed a certain way in a letter. So there's ways of getting around that. You can't discuss specifics of business. And the way it's presented, it was just basically told, have this person, take over this particular property. It was more talking about if it was just personal property, not business, where finances and money were being taken care of. Anybody that knows, how that works is just a way you have to be careful of how you communicate it. But trust me, it was communicated clearly.
With JT, welcome. And we have Inky on the phone, and he wants to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Inky.
Peace, bro. Can
What's
everybody hear me good?
Can you hear him okay?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Go ahead.
Hey, do you know the Bronx crew? Like the people that was behind the Mount Vernon store?
I know some of them, yes. I know Zakina ran that store before she ran Brooklyn.
Yeah, but you know Sadiq and Smalls and all of them?
Which Sadiq? I know a few Sadiqs.
Okay. No, it's just the people that like put up the money.
Yeah. Now you're going back to like the early 90s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the whole Bronx crew, it was like, there's a couple of different factions in the Bronx at the time, but
right.
Are there any details of any of the 3 different versions of the shooting story that you can tell us? Because from what we've been listening to so far, a couple of the sound like allegedly that there were some shooting coming from Polight side. We got a story that we got one story that says there was shooting coming from Umi's side at Polight. He was running across the street, dodging bullets.
That's the one I'm familiar with.
That story sounds a little crazy because the other brother actually got shot. So that doesn't reconcile with Polight's story that he told on Vlad.
Right.
So is there any of the stories that that kind of makes sense with Polight's story that he himself tells? Mm-hmm. And then also with Umi's story, like, is there anything that works?
Right. Now, I can only tell you the story I know from what Polight told me, because obviously I wasn't in the bookstore. I was there at the time, physically in the area in New York. I want to be clear, I was not in the bookstore when that happened, but I can tell you what Polight reiterated to me after that happened, that somebody came in through the Hart Street side, through the back side of the bookstore. He claims he didn't see nothing. It happened quick, that shots came from that side through the back. If you've ever been in the bookstore on Bushwick, you know where that back entrance is. You can come in through Hart Street around the back. And then he said the person ran out, and obviously these random bullets, struck the brother that got shot. And then, yes, he ran out through the other side. And again, I'm just reiterating what he told me. So I can't really, that's the version I knew at that time, what was going on there. The other two, I have heard the other two versions. And he believed it was Zakina and Zakina's crew. He believed it was her people, that was a targeted hit, because remember, the real issue we have to keep focused here that was going on at that time, Zakina, aka Patricia Lewis, did not want to give up that bookstore. That gets into a whole nother bunch of scandal and fuckery. So he believes, and I can probably attest there's some truth to that. Now, obviously, there could be more to it, but again, I can only speak on what I knew was going on at that time. But that's the story that I was very familiar
Let me
with.
tell you this. Let me say this from being around some of the other places. The only because I've been hearing some of these things for quite a while, and we've been trying to piece some stuff together. The only problem with that is Zakina was at one time maybe close to Polight, almost like his mom.
Correct.
So that doesn't really reconcile. If that was the case,
but let me stop you 1 second there. I'm going to tell you this. I don't know how well you know Zakina. I disregard all that. A lot of people don't know the foul shit that Zakina did over the years. They don't know what she did, her and Dr. York's sister, Wakia, with the property in Philadelphia. A lot of people don't know the inside agenda, what's been going on with that property on Bushwick. I hear what you're saying. I kind of know where you're going with it, but I wouldn't dumb it down or invalidate it with that at all. And I'm not saying Polight's story is true. I want to make that clear.
Streaming my stream.
Say it again.
Sinetta is streaming my stream right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just want to make that. I just want to make that clear. And again, I'm here. I'm not taking anybody's side or trying to defend anybody. And by all means, what you could be saying, Brother Enki, there might be some truth to that. I can only speak on what I was aware of. Even though Zakina she was an instrumental person on bringing Polight in, was that type of figure that you're describing. You're 100% right. But I think what happens, it's sometimes that old saying where the student sometimes gets the accolades and the popularity that the master does, and jealousy around it. Yeah.
Okay, we do it one question at a time because we got JT up here as well, and I know he itching to ask a question from the York angle.
Okay.
Hey JT, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the invite.
You want me to send you the link?
Yeah, real quick. So I'm always about the money. I'm really interested in trying to figure out how was the money structured when it came to setting up these different bookstores, the person that would be running the bookstore, how would the money then flow up top to York?
All right, real simple. First of all, I had several different bookstores over a 20-something year period. I had a bookstore. I've had 3 different bookstores here in Florida. I had bookstores in Macon, Georgia. I helped at one period of time. People are familiar with our bookstore we used to have on West 52nd Street in Philadelphia. This is how the money was funneled to the organization. We used to have classes every 2 weeks up on the land, and there were classes for bookstore owners only, and you had to have a certain quota to attend those classes. So you basically would open up a bookstore. For the most part, as far as getting the property, the space, that was pretty much on you. Now, the office would give you what they called at that time sometimes a consignment. I would get maybe $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 worth of books to fill my store, but you were required to pay that back.
Right.
The money would get directly to the office in York. You would attend these classes and turn in, and based on that turn in, that would also determine what kind of product you also got. And then you would go back to your respective states, fill your store, do classes, promote your store, bring people in. Really, in essence, you really wasn't, unless you was in a really hot market, like a big city like New York, Philly, you didn't really make that much money.
Right.
They really wasn't giving you, even the wholesale prices were kind of comical. Like for an example, if a book was $10, you might get it for $7. If it was 20, you might get it for 15. You know what I'm saying? That's right. So that's how York got his money when you went up to the land to attend the classes, and you would turn in. We had these classes. They would usually be in the middle of a week on a Wednesday, and if you didn't turn in, you probably couldn't get into those classes. They were only for people that own bookstores. That was going on pretty much in the 90s to the early 2000s when the land was first opened and built. Officially, I think our first Savior's Day was 93. But yeah, that's how the money would get directly to York. But as far as the operation of the bookstore, paying the rent, getting it up and running, I mean, we had brothers that were carpenters that had skills, trades. You did that all on your own. You didn't get no assistance. That was all done by you.
Right.
And I have to assume that there was no sales tax being collected when selling these books and these items.
No, hell to the no. But you had to abide in your local state if you were doing shit legit.
One community, welcome.
Right. You had to handle your own personal taxes. That money you was bringing up to the land was straight cash. And what they was doing with it, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But no, it's not like we were going up there with a check. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
We were going up there with straight paper money when you were turning in books, sales from books.
Let me pause it and let me ask some of the quicker questions from the chat. So Muhammad said, where is it? She said, is the name of, where did it go? Oh, what's York's wife's name who has the same name as York's mom? She said she believes she had some of his favorite kids.
You talk about Fatima Sanusi? I'm not sure. I think you're talking about Fatima Sanusi. And I know I had a son. I know Muhammad, the son, and the daughter. That's the one, until I left, was living still in 719 on Bushwick Avenue. Before I left, I actually sat with her several times, and she was the one, which I don't want to open something else, but maybe we'll get to that with the legal. She was the one instructing me to go away from dealing with all that Liberian diplomatic stuff, because what people don't know is that Fatima Sanusi, her son Muhammad, and the sister at the time, Rochelle, who were going back and forth to Liberia to try and change Dr. York's general counsel status. Now, I know the members are going to tell you he is a general counsel. That's not true. He was honorary at first. They spent a lot of money and time trying to change that. Before I left New York, she had made it clear to me that was going to hurt him, not to keep trying to play that angle. A lot of those things, I mean, if we have time, we'll get to that. A lot of those things were legal strategies. I know a lot of the members now, it's hard for them to stomach that. A lot of the newer ones are completely clueless. But I believe that's who you're talking about. Because, again, when you're saying York's wives, we have to be a little more specific because, as you know, there's many of them.
Exactly.
I believe that's the one you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. And then there was another one. Hold on, let me scroll up. Because I know we got questions. Some of them can be answered with like a yes or no, and then some going to take a couple of minutes. Okay. Oh, Moose said, do you remember Anthony Evans, a.k.a.
Sure.
Buns? Yeah,
Sure.
you said that before I even finished.
I think Bunny's watching now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, well, look, Bunny was an instrumental person to me, even though we haven't talked in years. I don't know what Bunny's stance on now. Look, I want to make this clear. There was a lot of good people I've met over the years. Some I lost contact. I can speak positive about Bunny, aka Brother Anthony Evans. He was always treating me with respect. Always talked to me as an elder, and always gave me guidance when he could. And I can tell you, Bunny put some time in. Again, I hope the brother's doing well. I haven't talked to him in years. I hope he's fine. I don't know his stance, where he's at now, regardless if it's in opposition to mine. That's irrelevant. I still got respect for him. And I can attest, that Bunny was a warrior, boots on the ground, did his thing. He put a lot. He basically, he devoted his entire life to it. I'm not going to speak for him. I'm sure he could tell you that. But yes, I am very well aware of Brother Bun, a.k.a. Anthony Evans.
Okay, DJ Mays, I believe his name used to be Yao.
I know that's Brother Marcus. I know Marcus well, aka Brother Noel. I know Brother Mark. He helped me with one of those stores. Hey, Brother Marcus helped me.
Condition, don't you?
Shout out to Brother Marcus. He helped me with 2 stores. He was part of one of the stores I had in Macon, Georgia, right across the street from where he was living. Me and him, we developed a relationship. I met him in Georgia. I know he's out of Baltimore, Maryland, and we wound up striking up a good friendship. We had a lot of things in common, sports and other things. I spent time at his house. We hung out. He was instrumental in helping with that Macon, Georgia store. He knows what I'm talking about if he's in the room. I know Noel.
He was there when we when that whole when they was doing the robbing in Baltimore. He was right there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he goes back. We didn't know each other at the time, but I used to see him at the 19 classes up on Jezza Ave. That's when I first saw him, Brother Marcus. But at that time, we didn't know each other like that. But yeah, I know him very well. We still communicate once in a while.
Do you know Ben?
Say it again.
She said, "Do you know Ben?" I'm not sure which Ben she's referring to.
Oh no, you gotta be a little more specific.
Somebody's knocking at the door.
Not sure who Ben is. Maybe I might know
Ben
him by
who,
his name.
Devanya?
Say it again.
I was talking to the Ben who, Devanya.
Doesn't ring a bell. Now keep in mind.
Delay, so it'll take a minute to reply.
But keep in mind, a lot of us changed names through different schools over the years. So though you might throw a name at me, I may not know them by the name you know them. I might know them by a previous name. So keep that in mind. I might say I don't or do know them. It's sometimes the name, it could be under a different name. Not sure.
Okay. She said Harlem 125th.
Doesn't ring a bell unless I know him by a different name or sort of face.
Mm-hmm. Uda, did you have a question? Oh, he done dropped off again. JT, Chuck, do y'all have questions? I know you got some, JT.
Yeah, I mean, my question goes back to the properties. So when you deal with nonprofit organizations, especially religious-based nonprofit organizations, the reason why the Internal Revenue Service gives these organizations the tax exemption is because they're supposed to be doing some sort of public good, right? So if they're doing something like feeding the homeless and they're doing some sort of public service that otherwise the federal government or the state government would be doing, it's an incentive for the government to make those donations tax exempt because they're basically filling in the gap of what a government would have to pay for. So I say all that to tie down to, I mean, other than the stated mission and goal of saving souls or whatever, what public good was being done with the funds to justify a tax exemption? Because to me, it seems as this is really a for-profit enterprise that was greatly benefiting one individual person, and there really was no public benefit.
Right. Now, keep this in mind. As us being members, you got to remember at that time, now I can say there was a period where the Answer Rule Law community in New York, and those that were there know, did a lot of good for that neighborhood. There was a time where we had a good reputation. There was a time where that whole stretch or area was obviously, it's a known fact, the Answer Rule Law community received stuff from local politicians and officials for cleaning that neighborhood up, et cetera. As far as the inner workings of the finances, you have to keep this in mind. We didn't really have no control of that. We were busy out peddling York's comic books all day. We were out on the streets all day, whether we were walking or setting up tables in all the boroughs, propagating, selling books, incense, oils, jewelry, because our job was to go out and we had a quota we had to bring back every day. Right. So as members at that time, we really had no access to what were the inner workings of, say, the office, how funds were being distributed. That just wasn't our job. And because we were so engulfed in what we were doing, again, I can only speak my focus every day, having wives and children to feed. I was going out there trying to make money. And that's just the way it was. But you're right. Everything you're saying with nonprofit, that's how it's supposed to work. Now, I do know there was, people would move in. We know there was shit going on with food stamps, welfare. I know when I came in, you turned a lot of your personal property over, or whatever you can quote unquote donate. I don't want to act like you were forced into. I know some people have said stories about that. But you were asked, I know when I came in, I contributed whatever I had at that time, which may not have been much, but I know there were other people that came in, say sisters who were on welfare collecting food stamps. That stuff continued. So there was a lot of stuff going on, but as far as the exact, we didn't have access or knowledge to how they were doing all that type of stuff, business, structuring the money, because again, when I first came in, I was 17 going on 18 years old, and I'm thinking I'm in a movement to save the world. So I'm trying to be out there, doing my thing, et cetera, out there. Cause I was on Delancey and Essex. That was my main spot. I used to pedal Fordham Road in the Bronx. be on Jamaica Avenue. We'd set up in subways. I mean, you name it. We were just trying to hustle that money because we literally thought we was on a mission, to save the fucking world and raise the 144,000. When you're in that cult mentality, that's where my mind was at that time. But yeah, that's all I can really give you on that question.
Gotcha. I got one quick follow up. If I can do a follow up. All right. So based on what the conversation that I had with Chuck Morgan, and once again, Chuck, I appreciate you coming on my show the other day. I understand that it was a part of, at least at some point, it was a part of the organization's financial strategy to have single mothers, or even if they weren't single because they were splitting up families anyway, to make sure that they got on to welfare, and then obviously those checks would be turned over. Now, here's my follow-up question to that. So if they were savvy enough to understand how to game the welfare system, I would have to also assume that they were savvy enough to know how to game the tax refund system. So I would have questions about how would they, either instruct, or if this even happened. I'm not sure if this would happen, but how would they instruct come tax season time? I'm sure that they would aware that if you have all these single mothers on welfare, that there was opportunities for them to get larger tax refund with child tax credit and earned income tax credit and stuff like that. Was there a concerted effort to be like, okay, all you need to go to H&R Block or this tax service so that we can get these refunds? And obviously those refunds, I would have to assume, would be then turned over to York.
I can tell you this, all the years that I lived in the community, and my wife, who's passed on, my first wife, transitioned on, we never filed any tax returns, because you got to remember at that time. Now, I'm not saying you're right as far as the office, the administration. Obviously, York would have an inner circle of females, because females did everything in the office. Brothers didn't really have too much to do with any of that. Obviously, things were done. I'd be lying to you if I sat here. I couldn't really tell you in detail, but obviously they did something. But I can say us on a member level, all those years, I never filed a tax return. My wife never did. We were just out there hustling, making cash, because you got to remember, we're dealing with a time where it's not like now, where everything, credit and all these type of non-paper currencies are huge now. Back then, I didn't even have a credit card. I didn't even have a cash book. I was always walking around with a wad of cash in my pocket. So our mind, we weren't thinking about any of that. As long as you had a knot in your pocket and you were walking around and you could do what you had to do, you didn't really care. I wasn't thinking about the system, filing taxes. It was the furthest thing on my mind. I mean, I remember some of us, after we would hustle books all day, we'd go get a shopping cart. I mean, anybody that knows, you go to Midtown Manhattan in the wholesale district, we would get socks, gloves, anything. We'd walk the streets at night. Some of us did this on the side on our own to hustle up, extra money. So back then it was about doing whatever you had to do to hustle to make cash, because like I said, we're talking about a time where it wasn't about credit cards and checks. It just wasn't necessary at the time. So from a member level, only thing I can speak on, myself and my wife at the time, we didn't file no tax returns. I ain't doing it for years.
Yeah. And this part isn't a question. It's more of a statement, because I see this a lot in the conscious community, where you have brothers and sisters who are working the mission, and they're mostly going to be self-employed, because it's extremely hard to hold down a 9-to-5 job and continue and work in the mission. But here's the issue, people. You are not going to have access to Social Security if you're not filing tax returns.
Correct.
Because to have access to the Social Security system, you have to have some paper trail work, even if it's self-employed, because what you need 40 credits in the Social Security system. The maximum amount of credits that you're able to earn per year is 4. No matter if you make $10,000 or $10 million in a year, you can only
let me verify something. I don't mean to cut you off, but you know how I know you're right? You know how every year they send you a statement of your Social Security for every year? Well, every time I get one, there's that gap. All those years I lived in the community, there's nothing to show for those years.
Right. And that affects how much you're going to get. So I implore you, file a tax return so you can at least get those 40 credits, which takes 10 years, so that, you know, when all is said and done and you worked a hard life, whether you feel as if you were misled or whatever organization that you're in, you're going to want to be able to have some sort of retirement income. So file these tax returns.
You want to know where that ignorance comes from? Because they'll sit there and say, don't work a job in the world. Don't work for the system. Don't work for the devil, this and that. These are the same cats that are paying rent to the devil every day. These are the same cats that are going to the gas station, putting gas in their car at the devil's gas station. These are the same cats shopping in Walmart and supermarkets. They think because they got a little hustle on the street with a little table and a stand set up, they think they're independent. And as I've said many times before, don't confuse a hustle for a legitimate business. Right. Okay? Because you're right. What's going to happen, and I watched a lot of elders over the year. I mentioned Abby Yaya a couple nights ago on Sarnetta's show. I watched many elders die with nothing because they spent their whole life with their hustle mentality. And I get it. But see, we're programmed at that time with sacrifice for the mission. Everything was under this. See, I never understood, as I look at it later, where being broke was like a virtue to being conscious, because you always program, oh, you're doing this to sacrifice. To sacrifice for what? Because I watched a lot of these elders give their lives, and I'm sure Brother Bunny can attest to this. Some of the elders that have transitioned on have left here with nothing. And what do these Nuwapians do for them? They give them a balloon ceremony. It's a fucking joke, because there's no financial plan in these organizations. There's no generational wealth. There's no long-term business plans. It's all, let's hustle for the moment. That's because there's an agenda. But you're absolutely right. What tends to happen is, unfortunately, you're going to get old and aged, and like you say, you don't have any track record. You're not going to get anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I have a chat curiosity question, because they go on a little crazy in it. Are you MC Search?
Yeah, I see all the ignorance. First of all, let me address that. My nationality is Sicilian and Lebanese. Okay, if you read York's books,
see any of that.
Okay, if you read York's books, he gives a breakdown. This is how I came into the nation and the doctrine. So let me just clarify that, because see, that's the other game that people will play in the conscious community, the ethnicity, light, dark skin tone feature game. I've been through all that. So any of the bullshit, what I went through over the years is irrelevant. I've heard it all. I've heard it all. It's comical, but let me explain something just so you understand. In York's books, he breaks down who consists of the Nubian family, which is a whole bunch of other quote unquote ethnicities, such as Japanese, some Chinese, Sicilian, people from southeastern part of the Mediterranean, and some people of the Arab world. And that's how I was taken into the doctrine. Again, there was a bookstore at the time on 179th and Parsons and Jamaica Avenue. And the first book the brother sold to me was A Fallacy of Christmas. And that's how he came at me, and it was all new to me, and sparked my interest. So that's what got me involved. But listen, I've heard it all. I mean, I can tell you stories I've been through, the bullshit I've had to face. So they can have their little fun, MC Search, whatever, knock yourself out. It's not going to divert from what the truth is. See, that's some personal shit that those people got to get over, because there was a lot of that light skin, dark skin shit, racism going on in the community, and it's all good. But like I say, I got tougher skin than that. So you have fun with your little MC Search jokes, whatever. Who cares? Anyway, next.
My question is, do you know anything about Polight and his Golden Ankh Foundation?
No, because you got to remember, a lot of that stuff started afterwards. So I don't want to be hypocritical.
I don't want you to say anything you don't know. I'm just
and I don't. So I couldn't give you any inside information, because again, anything that was after that time period that I referenced, I couldn't really give you any information on some of his personal dealings after that. So I have to say no, I don't.
Okay, that was my question. Devanya, your link, I sent it to your email. Inky, I sent it to your email if you want to come up. Uda, JT, do y'all have any questions? Chuck?
No. Mike's this is Mike's show. Let him have it. It's excellent.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a couple of things, if you have questions, you can interrupt. I just had a couple of key points that I wanted to run through, because I know I had talked with Chuck about this earlier. I know right now one of the big narratives is They're shifting a lot. You know, you have a lot of members saying that these were members committing these molestation acts, and these were some of York's siblings doing this. But I haven't heard this question posed, and it's fucking baffling to me. You mean to tell me now this is the new narrative, okay? So if this was going on all these years inside the community, outside the community, and around the community, you mean to tell me not once this came to York's attention? I don't hear not one person asking that question, because there are people making claims this was going on since the Brooklyn days, up to upstate New York, Jezza Abba, up to Eatonton, the land. So if this was going on all these years, and I already know the program response that they'll give. Oh, he was too busy writing books, this and that. That's a cop-out. I know York had time. He spent time with us. He was on the land, spent plenty of time on the land. So you're telling me in all this period, nobody ever once went to York and said, look, something is going on? Or is it a case that it started from the top, being York, and trickled its way down? Is it a case that this behavior was kind of something that started from the top, trickled down? Because here's the game. If somebody like Tariq Noel comes forward and clearly identifies York as his molester, there was one brother in a show, I think it was Chuck did, where he said, well, maybe the room was dark and he didn't know it was York. And Tariq Noel went off. Come on. So somebody who makes a claim, says they got molested by York, they're immediately going to be attacked. They're lying. They're making it up. They're a sellout. They're a traitor. But then they'll make statements such as Jacob York did this or that, and they're not providing any proof or evidence. And I'm not sticking up for anybody. I'm saying bring some receipts. If you're saying one of York's siblings did it, bring that person on, and I'm here, oh, I don't want to say the name. Then don't bring it up at all. Don't bring it up at all. I find it hard to believe, knowing what I know, seeing what I've seen, and being around.
He's not DJ Search.
Right.
He's not DJ Search, Matrix.
My whole point is I find it hard to believe that York didn't know anything about this. I just
y'all done started confusing people in the chat. Stop now. See what happens when y'all say stuff.
Yeah. But like I said, it's expected. You know,
JP,
ignorance is
Did
expected.
you have another question? I know you said you might not have long.
Right. So my last part of the question is really, you know, obviously my angle is always going to be on the money side of it. You're dedicating your life towards this mission, right? And obviously it's like a noble cause fallacy. So when it comes to a noble cause fallacy, you're going to have people who are going to go above and beyond what they would normally do in a situation. So a noble cause fallacy is when the end is always going to justify the means, right? So it doesn't matter how we get there, what things that may feel like they contradict all the things that we stand for, as long as the ends turn out the way we want it, then we're willing to do it. When it comes to York and the situation, because you were in it all the way through the trial, because you were helping him with his defense. Right. What was the morale, and how were the leadership doing a drive? Because obviously it took a lot of money for this legal defense. What was the morale of the rank and file members while they're trying to do this work? They're striving to be righteous in the way that the teachings say to be, but they also are being pulled on to help fund a defense for these type of crimes.
Right. You got to understand this. As soon as York was incarcerated, there are some Nuwapians and different platforms. They are speaking some truths now. The fraction started right out the gate. People started jockeying for position of power. You got to understand, some people don't want York to ever get out because their money games will be up. You had people like Deuce with York. You had his sister, Dale York. You had Zakina. What it started to become was, what can I jockey for position to get money and power? Now, at first, obviously, it was all shock to us when this first went down. And, the morale was to fight, because everybody was in complete shock. I know at that period, there was nothing you could say to me. I was willing to give my life for the man. And there was incidents where I can recall when the zoning fractions were going on the land, and we thought the land was going to be raided. And I remember I was in Macon and got a call. I was with a group of brothers. I ain't going to say names because we loaded up the car with, we painted our faces, loaded the car with automatic weapons. We were ready to ride up to the land. And if there was going to be a shootout, we were willing to go that length. I say that to say that's how devoted we were to what we were doing because, obviously keep this in mind. People always say, they'll criticize people for leaving and where they are now. You got to remember, we were embedded in that mindset. So you can't say that. It's like, you can't compare the two. At that time, I would have gave my life for York. I would have, because that's how dedicated I was. And I almost did several times. And that was one incident. There was others. And when he first got arrested, the morale, obviously, shock is still settling in, because you got to understand this. And this is where some of the members are now. And I understand, where they're at and their approach and why some of them are angry. And look, I ain't got nothing against nobody. Like I say, I'm going to speak my mind. I'm not going to back down from anything. But you have to understand, when you've built a man up to be this Messiah type figure, okay, and that's what you've devoted your life to, and that's snatched from you, that puts you, and I'm saying this because I watched my mate at the time go into a serious state of depression because of York being arrested. So there was a lot of anger, but we were channeling that anger to fight.
Gotcha.
But what started to happen was people started jockeying. There's different fractions and groups. Some still exist today. People were lobbying and jockeying for position of getting property, taking things over, running things, all the fundraisers. That's still going on today from what I'm hearing and seeing, where people started using York's legal case as a tool to hustle money from members. So it started out with a uplift in morale to fight, but obviously as time has gone by now, it's become a hot mess. It's just people jockeying for position. Now, are there some people still genuinely out there fighting for York's freedom? I'm sure there is, and I'm sure they will continue to. I can't say who it is and who it's not, but there's a lot of separation, confusion, and division amongst the group as a whole, because you got different fractions and they're all banging on each other right now. You see it on all the different platforms, because there's this group over here, there's this group over here, and there's different perspectives. You can't have a unified fight when everybody has their own approach and perspective, but yet on the surface claiming to be all doing the same thing. It just doesn't work like that. So it started out with a positive morale, but it's kind of branched out into a lot of chaos right now.
Got it, man. Brother, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm going to bow out, let somebody else come up, but thank you. Great insight.
No problem.
Appreciate you, JT. Mike, you're going to touch on that whole Masonic Lodge thing.
Yeah.
And the racket that came out of it. And
right.
The whole thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sitting up here on mute trying to talk. Inky called back in for a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Inky.
I wanted to get your opinion on Jacob York's character. In terms of, we've had one interview on House Consciousness.
Right.
Where Jacob York was kind of presented as a stand-up guy, and then we had the Moorish World TV show where he presented a different character. So you kind of touched on it earlier, but you moved away from it. I want you to kind of just
right.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
No problem. I have to be honest with you. I know of Jacob York, whether he may or may not remember me from seeing me in earlier years here and there. I don't have a relationship. I can honestly say we didn't talk or associate or affiliate like that. And remember, at the time frame that he was discussing when he came in and left, and his later involvement in Georgia, that was more from an outside perspective, though he might have been in the area, and like as he described, he would still communicate and visited his pop that time when he came up to Georgia. He was pretty much gone by that time. So I don't really have a personal relationship. I can't really assess his character because I'd be hypocritical because I don't really know him like that. Only thing I do know of is a lot of the stuff that has surfaced after his father has gotten arrested about, the trips to Florida. Did those trips happen? Yes, but I don't think he's denying that. I think there's confusion of what exactly happened on those trips. Again, I can't speak on that because I'd be hypocritical. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth, anybody else's mouth. Some of those things that have come up with Jacob York and his character, keep in mind, these are things that have come up after his fathers got incarcerated. But as far as going back to them times in the Ansars, when he was around, again, I didn't have that personal relationship and his involvement. So I can't really assess or speak on his character. That would be hypocritical.
Let me ask it this way then, in a slightly different way. The things that, because it basically looks like this from the outside looking in. It looks like the people who think that Dr. York, or people that are holding out for Dr. York to be innocent, are the people that are saying Jacob is the bad guy. It
Correct.
looks like the people that are saying, no, Dr. York definitely did it.
Correct.
Are the people that are saying that Jacob is not such a bad guy. Are you of the group of people that believe the victims that Dr. York is guilty of some degree of pedophilia or child molestation?
Yes. I am of the group, after working on his case, talking to the victims. And if you read in the PSI report, there are people by name. I'm not going to get into it. Allegedly, I don't know Bunny's stance on it. 2 of his daughters are on that PSI. Some of the other sisters that I know personally, the other thing they'll say in that 77 count.
Let me just cut you off for a second. Let me ask you another question. This might seem a little weird, but I would like you to humor me. Is there some part of you that still loves or honors Dr. York?
Well, let me say this. Like I say, at the time when I first came in, I had the ultimate respect for him, right? I did have that love for him like a father. I always have a certain, I don't know if I would call it love now. I would always have a certain level of respect, because keep this in mind, outside of some of the bizarre things in the doctrine that people may not agree with, he was saying a lot of other things that a lot of other teachers and elders were saying. So again, we got to learn to separate the message from the messenger. All right. That's what people fail to do. It's like R. Kelly. R. Kelly did what he did, allegedly, but does it change the fact that he's a talented musician? No. And stop fronting. People probably still listen to his music. See, that's where we are twisted in our mindset. So I have respect as far as what I learned, but I also have a certain level of disappointment from what I uncovered later. But love, I don't think you could put love there. Disappointment would be more so of an emotion to describe. But I've never denied that Dr. York is not an intelligent man. Obviously, look what he built. I mean, you'd be a fool not to say that. So we're not questioning the man's intelligence.
I'll be honest. I just wanted to put you under a little bit of a scrutiny to see what level of credibility I could assign to the things you're saying. So as you said, man, Dr. York is a complete scumbag, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm about to, all right, Tasha, I'm about to get out of here.
All right.
But the most, no, I'm saying, but the most people that are really close to the situation, that's the biggest thing that people have to come to grips with. It's like, there's one part of you that still appreciates whatever his information added to your life, as well as the other part of you that's completely disgusted by you having to be associated with a known monster. Possibly, I think he's got the largest child molestation case in history. Like, he's Michael Jordan of molestation right now. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, and I think that's the part where people start to open up and be honest about that. I've always said
this. Right. I'm sorry. I always said this, Hanky. I made my choices on my own. I don't have any animosity towards Dr. York, the nation. I made those conscious decisions on my own, and I also made the conscious decision to leave and change and go my own route. So at the end of the day, I'm a grown-ass man. I made decisions, and I'm accountable for them. I don't have any animosity or blame. I don't sit around bitching, moaning, complaining about what was done to me, because again, at the end of the day, Dr. York didn't put a gun to my head and force me to come into the organization. I did that willingly. Now, all of us have to take that burden of responsibility regardless of what happened. Some went through some fucked up shit and some didn't. But that's just my stance on it. So yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate the brother's transparency. How long were you in the lodge? Were you in Dr. York's lodge before Brother Polight came in? Or
yes. No, yes, before. I was one of the first group of people. Remember, the first initiations were done on Tamaray. We went through, and if there's some brothers in here might remember that, we went through raisings where we did 3 degrees in one night. And if Bunny's still in here, I think Bunny might have actually been part of my raising. I can't remember. And that raising or initiation, that was all 3 Masonic degrees in one night. We started literally, I remember we came in around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. We didn't get out of there till after midnight. It was a 13, 14, 15-hour initiation, and it wasn't for the weak or heart. I'm not going to get into all that here because that's something else. But yes, I was, that was back in 2000 when we first started forming the lodge, 2000 going into 2001. And then I was appointed as the worshipful master here in the southern jurisdiction at the time. That's how I got down here with the lodge.
Okay, Uda, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah. I wanted to ask him a question. Peace, my brother, man. First of all, I commend you on speaking, everything that you're speaking, very heartfelt and very genuine. And I feel where you're coming from, right? But I wanted to ask you, right now in this time right now when we're dealing with, this pedophilia, the molestation, and all of these things are coming right back to a time right now, right? Recently we seen his daughter, Uma York, on Tahaka Bay's show was talking. Correct. And King Simon was on as well, right? And she was saying, like, you're my spiritual godfather, or my spiritual uncle, I think she was saying, and you should have known, and I went to you and things like that. Be it that you was a part and around it, right? Because a lot of people say, like, damn, man, like they were really shocked to know that this was happening. Like, damn, I would have never knew this was happening. But, to you, was there any like signs that, because people said like on the land, there was children popping up pregnant. There was a lot of different things that was happening on the land. Like, did you know of did you know of brothers, or did you know of people that was, doing things like that besides York, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Because some things are just like a chain, and maybe it's like a culture, but you know what I mean? Do you see anything like that? Or did you know of?
Yes, great question. Now keep this in mind. Yes, I've heard stories. Okay. Now, stories are just stories. A lot of things that we would hear through the vine when people got removed from the land, we would hear stories that were going on with certain members. Even
you cut out for a minute.
Coming back.
No, Michael, Mike,
probably just
your
a service.
signals went bad. Yeah.
Probably just a signal thing.
Oh, he was answering it, wasn't he?
He was, but it stopped. Like, I think it froze, right?
Yeah, he froze.
Yeah, he just froze.
So if it drop off, it'll either come back or
make him pull out and pull in.
Chuck, can you hit it? Can you call him?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, we hear you now. There you
go.
We
hear you, brother.
Yeah, okay. I'll keep my eye on it.
Unless
I just
you want to hop up here, Nuwapian Facts, I advise you to stay out my chat.
Yeah, we good.
Listen, if Nuwapian Facts talks too much shit from a distance,
all he got to do is come in the room, show your face if you want to talk. Come in the room and show your face.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to
see, that's the other thing.
Right now.
Now let
these cats hide behind avatars and screen names. And I checked out his garbage site. It's all old garbage and bullshit. And he has no clue. He has no clue of what he's talking about. And he's one of those loyal puppets. So all I can say is, if you got something to say, come in the room, brother. Speak your piece. Come in the room and speak your piece, because all that old shit you got on there about the case, pure garbage. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked with trolls.
Anyway.
You either jumping up.
Want me to come back to you? Let me tell you back where I was at, brother. Being it now, right, that we're dealing with all this pedophilia, all of these things, right? And it's ironic that Polight is the reason right now, after praising Dr. York, that he's the reason that got this whole internet buzzing, got everybody coming out of different sectors, coming together, going to everybody's page, speaking about this. Victims are speaking in everybody's chat about their traumas right now.
Correct.
Many people that was on the land, a lot of people say that they don't know and didn't see things, right? But even my own cousin, when he was a kid, he was the making of a child killer. And I seen that. So sometimes we sometimes act like we don't see things, or maybe sometimes just people don't want to say. So, being that Uma York was talking to even King Simon, was like, yo, you supposed to know certain situations. And she was coming at him real hard on the end, and people acting like they never know. I just wanted to know, do you know of anything, and did you see anything? And you was leaving on, is a difference between hearing and knowing, and you was hearing, and that's where you left off before you were sidetracked, brother.
Right. Now, as I said, did I see anything specifically? No. My kids, my youngest, not my youngest, my oldest son was born in the community. He was around York. He was around a lot of the people. So I can honestly say no harm was ever done to him. Again, when you're hearing stories, it's hearsay. There were some things I heard and seen as far as what people were telling me, but I can't say I saw anything specific. Now, as far as what Uma York was talking about, a lot of the stuff that she is referring to is personal family business. So I'm not going to speak on York's family business and her. Obviously, she's telling her story. I do believe what she's saying she went through, and I do know some of the stuff she was saying as far as her sister and stuff. Some of that stuff went down. But again, I don't want to be hypocritical and speak on family business. Now, I heard, as far as me, things that I heard, you got to understand, we were under a mindset that anytime something came up where the nation or York was being accused of wrongdoing, we always took it as a jab, like, oh, it's all slander. And sometimes we blocked it out because we were so dedicated to what we were doing. You got to understand, when you had that cult loyal mindset, you start to kind of ignore things and dust them off because you kind of tend not to want to dig into them further. Because keep this in mind. Mm-hmm. You leave your life and you move in, and that's all you got. Think about that for a minute. Understand, I'm trying to place people in the mindset. So think about this. I think about it now, but I didn't look at it back then. Think about this. What is the need, whether it was Brooklyn or the land? Why are the women, children, and men separated? Now, I never looked at that at that time like it was a big deal. Now, we were told in Islam, that was the way the Islamic community was set up. I had to make an appointment to fuck my wife when I was in the Ansarullah community. In the green room. The green room is real. Any Ansar will tell you that that's a fact. It's real. But why did that continue? Why on the land was there a section where the women lived and the children and the men? Now, you got to commonly think, obviously, that's to keep certain things divided and for certain individuals to have access. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't look at it like then because I was so engulfed in the mission and what was going on. But ask yourself, I knew brothers who weren't living with their wives on the land. I'm talking about on the land. So what would be the need to live on the land where you have your wife living in one trailer with children and you living in a barn or another trailer with some brothers? What was the reason for that? You understand? So I'm bringing that up. Something just, you don't look at it then, but when you look at it now, you have to be outside the box. Now, the average member is going to have some justification for that. Okay, they'll give you some reasoning because they're still in that mindset. So they're not going to have the same perspective. But when I look at it now, that's very suspect in itself. So I can only tell you I heard things. I personally didn't see anything, but when I reflect back on some of the things I heard, and then when I look at some of those things, there could be some suspect things going there. But again, you got to have validation for that.
Yeah, but they did say that a lot of children was coming up missing. Yes. I'm not missing, but coming up pregnant and different things like that. And even younger people there was feeling that too. So did you know about things like that, like young children coming up pregnant or anything like that? Or maybe
you saw, say, all the events we had on the land. Now, again, I couldn't say who the father was, but you saw some younger sisters' bellies pregnant, no doubt. Yeah. I definitely saw that. I could definitely attest to that. Who was the father? I can't identify that, but can I say I saw young sisters pregnant? Shit, you could probably pull up some of the old Savior's Day videos and look at the ISIS procession of some of the sisters. Yes. And in their pictures. Okay, so you'll see some of the sisters were pregnant. So yes, I mean that was definitely a fact. You saw that, but I can't say who was the father of those babies and how that happened.
Ask more. Mm-hmm. I just don't want the chat to go up too far with the questions. Somebody asked what year you were born. That's got to be short. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else asked what happened to the lawyer, Victoria Bouchard. Isn't that how you say it?
She came after the fact. I don't know. I had no dealings with her. I don't know anything. So you'd have to ask current members about that, right? Okay. I have no idea. I have nothing to do with her or know anything about her.
Inky, do you have any more questions?
Yeah. So, what do you know about Polight in terms of Polight working on the Dr. York's case or helping out with the legal effort?
At that time, he was part of us who were trying to do the diplomatic status thing, attaining lawyers, filing appeals, up until that period where my dealings with him stopped. He was directly involved, and I want to clarify that there's a lot of miscons that Polight was not directly involved in, that Dr. York doesn't know, and that's completely untrue. Okay, and everything that went down in that bookstore was initiated because York wanted Polight to take over that Brooklyn bookstore. So he was, for a period that I was dealing with him, for the few years that we knew each other, he was working directly on it. He was very close with Dr. York's brother Obar, and they were trying to do some things with Africa at that time, because if people that do know Obar knows, he travels back and forth to Africa. So yes, he did have a direct involvement as far as on appeals, retaining lawyers, legal input for that period that he was around. So I can confirm that he did.
Mr. Morpheus, he did answer your question. It might not have been like you wanted, but he answered it. Oh, you stop. You coming back again. Oh, we're not doing this tonight.
Hold on. Make sure we got some more.
Somebody showed Nuwabian facts the window.
No, I think that Nuwabian facts is just trying to advertise.
Crap, you should call it.
He's trying to advertise himself as opposed to coming on the panel. Because I was saying that.
How is the lodge right now? Is the lodge still functioning in some capacity, or is the lodge went under?
Again, keep in mind, brother, I've been out of the game since late 2010, early 11. I don't want to be hypocritical. I can't speak on where they are at now currently with the lodge. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I can only tell you my involvement up until the time. Yeah, I left in 10 going into 11.
I don't even know how to say that one part. I think that
Mukmanoon.
I guess if you can see it.
Yeah, I see it. Mukmanoon. I see it.
Okay. Yeah, unseen.
That's a term for the faithful. That's the young children or the faithful.
They
Go ahead.
Questions. I don't even know what half this stuff means. Learn
That's
something
all right.
every day.
So what were you saying about the lodge? You were saying the lodge was up and running in 2010, 2011?
No, what Chuck was bringing up, when the lodge, first of all, there was two phases of the lodge. First, see, this is again goes into the inconsistency of some of the changes in the movement. We opened the lodge at first in early 2000. The lodge was formulated. There was a group of us brothers, and I was in that group that was going to Dr. York's house in Georgia on Mansfield Court in Athens. We were having weekly Sunday meetings there. And again, if Brother Anthony Evans Bunny is in here, he can attest to what I'm saying. The lodge was formulated there. York was putting it together there. We did the raising or the degrees or the initiations, Masonic initiations, up in the temple on Tamaray before they began to be branched out into other cities and states and other places that this lodge work was being done. That lasted for about 3-4 years. Then there was a lot of conflict because people felt that the lodge was creating division amongst the members because there were people that really didn't want to be affiliated with the lodge. They had their issues, or the Eastern Stars, and there were some that were pro or 100% for it. So then York shut it down completely. And anybody that was around can attest. It was shut down for a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. How it got reinstated around 2007, 08, I was in a visit in the prison with Sister Nifu and Robbie, who's Joseph Hibner's mate. Okay, we were in a visit and they suggested to York, because there was not consistent money coming in the office, that we need to restart the lodge, which would be a motivation factor to get brothers more motivated to bring funds into the office, because there was, at that time, they were struggling to get funds up for the administration, legal fees. So it was reopened. That was the original reason. And this is fact. That was the original reason why it was reinstated for the second time. And then that's when I had made my way down here and became the worshipful master over the Southern jurisdiction. I can only speak of the lodge up until that period. Now, where they are now, I don't want to be hypocritical. You would have to ask a current member.
Hold on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So did Polight join the lodge after it got reinstated, or was he there before it got put on pause?
No, it was there the second time. He couldn't have been there the first time because he wasn't around in 2000, like 2000, 2003. Right. He wasn't there that period. So it was definitely at the second time it got reinstated for sure.
Because I remember when we first opened it up and who was there, and when we did our raising that same night, it was all three in that same night. Sadiq, Rick, everybody was right there, and no, there was no Polight around at that time.
No, it was definitely the second phase. He was part of the lodge in that second phase for sure.
You can tell that by the fez, by the tarbush he was wearing, because we didn't have that initially.
We didn't have that tarbush the first time around.
We just had the black ones.
Yep. That is correct.
Mr. Morpheus has a question. Good evening. Are you here all the way? Because it's not showing a volume button for you, dude. Mr. Morpheus, you up here, but you ain't got no volume.
I'm gonna give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab another bottle of water. I'll be right back.
Okay,
bro.
Yeah, so I thought if anybody can remember, they can just look. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, he might have to jump out and come back in because he doesn't have the volume thing at the bottom.
Are you talking about Morpheus?
Yeah. It looked like
your audio is bad, Morpheus.
Who, me?
Not more.
Oh, okay.
Morpheus in the studio, that's why.
Yeah, Mike, I can ask you a question, right, bro?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
All right, so boom. So we're dealing with a cult here, right?
Correct.
So some people try to use a normal mind to break down the mind of a cult or the mind of a person that's inside of a cult, and we cannot do that.
That's correct.
Because we can't even much less take the mind of a neutral person and put them in the mind of a gang member. We can't even put their mind into that. And that's simpler than that, right? But it's kind of the same kind of a thinking, right? So since we're dealing with that, right? And when people speak out about this, because it's not a joke to speak out about these kind of things, because we're dealing with a cult, then we're dealing with something that has power, influence, and reach, right? So Dr. York had all of these things, and this cult had all of those things. So him being arrested doesn't mean that this stopped the power, the influence, or the reach. Because we witnessed the reach go to the music industry. Many people was influenced by the movement, many artists, many people in the industry, many things like that, right? Sure. So now we think about the mind of a cult, right? And because it takes a lot, because even now to go through a whole thing of what you or Chuck or anybody that been a part, what it takes to go about changing your mind and reconstructing your mind to get out of that, right? Based on some of the things that you and Chuck and anyone that's been a part of this cult or any cult or something like this, right? Do you think that Polight could have changed his thinking after being so deep into belief into Dr. York, into the point saying that he's my God, and even talking to Tariq Noel and on the bench and saying, even if he did it to you and your sisters or whatever the case may be, that man is still a God to me, and regardless, like that deep into the thinking, right? You know, sometimes you got to go through a process of, you know, maybe stepping back away from everything, maybe, but we've never seen Polight ever step away from nothing. He's been thrusted into the light, so you never really have a time to take that time to heal from trauma, right? So do you think that he could have possibly changed, or do we think that he most likely has the same kind of thinking and feeling and process like Dr. York would make him more likely or susceptible to have committed this or being capable of this crime that he committed?
That's a good question. And I'm going to tell you my thoughts on that. That's a really good question. And you make some really good points. And I agree with your analogies, how you broke that down. I can attest to, look, I'm not sticking up again for Polight. I want to make that clear. I'm just going to speak it for what it is, because I'm not going to be a hypocrite. Polight went through a lot of shit with that. I think he did and was scarred at that time from a lot of the resistance he received and a lot of the dirt that was going on. I saw it at that time. We've had some conversations, and rightfully so. I can attest to some of the crazy shit that was going on, because you got to understand, it's like being a new kid on the block. Okay, when you're the new kid on the block, and then you have people who've been around for years, you ain't just going to come on the block and you're going to start running shit, take over, because that's what was essentially going on. Because there's people like, wait, I've been in this shit for over 20 years. Who's this new jack coming in, been around for 6 months? See, there was always this competition thing in the nation. If you garnered York's attention, you automatically were a target. I got hated on for being who I am, looking the way I am. Who's this dude? Who the fuck is he? Who's this white guy? You gotta remember, York accepted, technically according to his books and doctrine, I'm in line with the ethnicity that he described as Nubians. So people would hate on that. There was other Latinos, other ethnicities. There was another brother, Walud, who same thing. He had fair skin, straight hair. He was, Walud. He was Puerto Rican. He would catch a lot of flack. Right. There was always this, if York, you gained any attention from York, you were a target. Everybody would hate on you, try to set you up. Because that mentality, everybody was vying for York's attention. I do believe that Polight had a lot of respect for York, because obviously he went hard for the short period of time. And this is just my opinion. I want to make that clear. I'm not going to speak because I can't, get in his mindset, but I do believe there was a lot of scars and traumas for the shit that went down and what he branched out to and became later. Now, reason why anything that goes down, you got to look at it, whether it's Africa Bambaataa, whether it's Polight. When molestation comes up, it's going to be the common thing. Whether it's intentional or not, people are automatically going to bring it back to York because they're going to say they all were influenced by the teaching. So the same way we can say, yes, the music industry, and there was a far out. It was influential. Matter of fact, you bring that up in the KMD video, Peach Fuzz, the brother that says no talking to the girls. That's the brother you saw. That's the brother that gave me my shahada. That brother in that video that's saying that. That video that's the brother that owned the bookstore with Bashar on Jamaica Avenue on 179th Street. Any old answer, I will tell you what I'm telling you is the truth. Okay. So, but you got to understand, everybody was vying for York's loyalty and attention. And I think Polight got so disappointed when all that went down. It's like, just think about it. It's like you go all out for your father or a loved one, and then you get, you get your backstabbed, you get turned on. I'm using an analogy to understand. I do think that affected his process. Now, as far as the Tariq Noel interview, when he said, Dr. York is his God, regardless if those molestation accusations are true or not. You'd have to get into his mind to understand it. That's coming from someplace, right? That's coming from a certain mindset and a mentality. Obviously, there could be some emotional or psychological residue. It could be from that. It could be, we don't know, maybe Polight went through something when he was a child. And I'm not making excuses, but obviously there was something going on in his mind to say that. I do believe, obviously, there was some psychological trauma there from a host of things. It's just my opinion now.
Yeah.
Mike, honey.
And Mike, real fast, I wanted to just add a piece in there. In my case, okay, so I was just the regular brother. I wasn't nothing special. I didn't do anything other than do a radio show. My whole thing, York. Listen, I was only good to York as long as I was relevant. Those audios from the shows, the Mo Better Man show, the Setting the Record Straight show that we had in DC, those shows and those that got recorded and York started selling them, I was being used by York. As long as I was doing something that brought in the attention, brought in revenue, I was cool. That's why I got to the position I was in. I got to get all the books. I got to get all the stuff before and that made a lot of people jealous in the DC community. Because even to the brother that when we was going to set this, York was going to set the triad of Atum Ray in DC. So you remember Jonathan Johnson, Big Tex, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Tex, the dude, the Moore, and me. So because dude was still living on Rhode Island Avenue, and he figured that, well, since I was not living there, why am I getting all this shine? I should be turning in every week. They said because we drop 2,000 bills every 2 weeks. We drop 5,000 bills whenever whenever they want it. And this thing, he ain't even sending nothing down. Right. And then the sister Sheila Jackson, she was like, don't you think that Doc likes Chuck like that? I mean, why are you tripping? And he sit up there and messed the show up. And I told York about it. So York said, cancel the show. When they had the ball, the Nwapuk ball that year, he called the brother out, put him on display, and just chastised him right in front of everybody and told him to leave the event. This was in Atlanta that time. Right. So my point was that people were very jealous, because you know, like I said, because they said that's Idris. Who is he? He ain't nobody, you know. And it was just because I just happened to do something that nobody was doing at the time in the city I was in, and then York liked it, and then he gave me all these credentials. But other than that, if I had stopped it, it wouldn't have been nothing. I wouldn't have been anything in the group. Well, but that's why I just wanted to add to that part.
Even when you speak of that, like, I've also seen, I've seen recently, and I've realized who the brother was when on the Brother Killer Priest podcast. That brother Tahuti, that's Michael Brown, who used to be in the Triad. And I didn't even know he was still around.
Oh no, I didn't even recognize.
Yeah, go on the Killer Priest podcast. I stumbled across it a couple months ago. The brother called Tahuti he has on it that's breaking down knowledge all the time. That's Brother Michael Brown. He was part of that second triad in Georgia in the mid to late 90s. The last I saw him for a short period of time, that bookstore on 2nd Street in Macon, he ran that for a while and then disappeared, because I know York came down on him because he was teaching things in classes that weren't quote unquote in alignment with the doctrine. But I couldn't believe it when I turned it on. I'm looking at him. I said, damn, I know this brother. And then when he put up his Instagram, Tahuti Brown, and then you could pull him up, Michael Brown, I said, shit, now he doing, he over there doing his own thing. So
I didn't know. I didn't recognize him. They told me he was there, and I was like, I don't recognize him.
Yeah, he's on the show all the time. That's Michael Brown, man. He used to be in the Triad back in the day. I didn't know that was him.
Me either.
Oh, I have a request before we get too far in, because you said you might have to leave before 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm good.
You had receipts to show us, honey. You have to show us the receipts before you leave.
As far as what?
You said you had the documents. Chuck, which one was it? The signed documents by York or whatnot? Whatever you have on hand. You ain't got to dig for that.
Well, what are we talking about? We got to be specific. What legal documents?
Do you have any of the ones with Polight on them, giving him permission?
I have letters that York wrote to me. Yes, I do have that.
Can you show us?
I'd have to. I can dig that out, but that's going to take some time.
You can send that by email later. Yeah.
I mean, you can either do that, or I can get it and post it.
If you would be so inclined, if you would like to come back some other time, because the chat is not finished asking you questions.
No, I'm okay for now. I was saying that because my little guy is asleep. He's asleep, so I'm okay for right now.
Yay.
If something pops up, I'll let you know. I just had to make sure I had him in bed. That was all.
Jaguar.
So let me ask you a question, brother. Right, Mike? You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, brother.
All right. Right. So now, right. So see, when we talk about things like this, right, people think of things like this to be a thing of the past, not possibly believing or knowing that this could be a thing of right now, and probably even stronger than we ever probably knew it right now. Who knows, right? Because everything start going underground, and then you never start seeing things on the surface, and then a lot of things be going on behind the scenes. So when I listen, I say that because, when listening to conversations, right, I say that because I was listening to Uma's. I go back to Uma again. I was listening to the Uma conversation, and sometimes, through anger, you hear people talking, you know what I'm saying? And I was just looking at it, and so, in some of it, I was just hearing some passion points, right? And at the end, I was hearing a lot of passion points, and she was just really like trying to be heard and just it was about the end, and she was just saying a bunch of stuff. And in the end, she was kind of saying like, listen, these people are going under the guise of, trying to help kids and things like that. Don't support them. And right previous to that, she was like, even, my mom don't speak to me like that. I'm not going into a family situation, but she was saying like, even like people close to her are not speaking to her and things like that. And maybe they're mad about maybe her speaking out about certain things and shedding light about situations. But she, in closing, she closed it saying like, listen, don't support them, don't support that. Listen, it's under the guys that like some money, like for helping the kids, and So she kind of spoke when they speaking, it's kind of speaking like present. It wasn't speaking like a thing of the past, it's speaking like a thing of now. So do you think that this thing could be either existing now, existing as it was, or maybe even possibly bigger than it was, and even Dr. York could still be from the inside running this whole thing, because even gang leaders from the inside of jails run gangs from the inside of jail. So why can't a person run a cult from inside of a jail? So what is your thoughts?
I think some of what you're saying is true. Whether I don't know if we could say York is running it from the prison. I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know about that part. But I do know this bullshit and craziness was existing, and I still heard it was existing up until after I left. For an example, with the brother Deuce with York, members are claiming, and I heard these stories at the time he was with Sister Nifu, that he was sexually abusing her kids. And I've recently heard stories where some elders knew about it and covered it up. So there's still plenty of information and stuff circulating that this stuff has continued to continue. You got to understand this. See, my perspective on that is it starts at the top. York is at the top. This is a behavior. Obviously, we don't know how these people are psychologically impacted, and it maybe drew out a sickness that was naturally in them. Obviously, it's a sickness. If you look at a young child and you have sexual thoughts for a young child, you're a sick individual. And I don't think that can be cured. I just don't think there's any cure for that shit. Okay. I know people say rehabilitation. I'm sorry. I'm going to take a stance on it. I think anybody that abuses a child should have their nuts castrated and fucking shot in the head. That's just my opinion. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm speaking for myself. I don't care what anybody says. There's no cure for that shit, because if that happened to your child, think about how you would feel. But as far as to your question, yes, this stuff, there's been many things, incidences. I can attest, we all saw Nifu with black eyes sometimes. There's been known fact that he was physically abusing the girl, and brothers knew this. So every brother that knew this and didn't say anything is just as guilty as the brother who was beating on the sister or abusing the children. You don't get a pass for that. You understand? So yes, I think that stuff continues. Now, whether York is facilitating, I don't think we can say that, but I do think he obviously the mindset and the toxic culture that the organization produced in regards to that. I think some people look, some brothers can attest to this. I remember on the land, brothers that would come up to the land trying to look like Dr. York. It used to make me laugh my ass off. They would come up with the sunglasses, try to style their hair the same way. And when I reflect back on that now, it says to me, the insecurities that they have, because there was a lot of brothers that wanted to be like Dr. York to the point where they would imitate him, try to emulate him, look like him, dress like him. And it was quite comical. I would laugh at it. But now when I look at it, it's really disturbing when you look at it, because it shows it is very, you hit something on the head earlier. The man was very influential, and he affected people in good and bad ways. But again, take no heed. Let's call it for what it is. He was the intelligence can be used in two ways, in a very powerful, uplifting ways. It can be used for both, very crafty and deceitful.
Okay, so somebody asked, what year were you born?
Me?
Yeah.
1971. I'm 50 years old.
Okay. And Information Man Show, if you want to come up, hop on up. I have a question that I would like to ask you as well. You know, it's a trap. I only mean to keep you a couple of minutes, but it usually lasts for longer than that. Thank you. Can you start tomorrow? Yeah, I can do it tomorrow.
It's powerful, family. Drop a like for this content.
I told y'all this was powerful
content right there, man. You gotta drop that like, man. Yeah, man. I just think
y'all are here, share for those of you that can. Go ahead, content creators.
But I do appreciate you, brother Morpheus, because you're bringing up some good points. You're attacking it. You know, you're just coming with just some good points and perspectives that we really need to think about. You make me think about some stuff. And I think these are the intelligent conversations we need to have. We need to put aside a lot of the personal emotion, because we're gonna all hear shit we don't like on both sides of the spectrum. That's reality.
I'm not trying to skip anybody's questions or anything, but I'm going from phone to email, calls, to chat, and then I have to keep checking. So, some of them, if we don't catch them, I apologize. Just repost it. Don't get angry. We're not ignoring you on purpose. We all over here to get info. Information Man Show. Welcome.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say a few words, and I have to step off the panel. Your guest, can you give me your name again? I just stepped into this conversation. I didn't know exactly your name and your background, but if you don't mind, because I wanted
my regular name or my answer name or both.
You don't have to give me your government name if you don't feel comfortable with that. I'm just being respectful.
Oh no, I have nothing to hide. My government name is Michael Bossi. Everybody knows me by that name too. But as far as when I came in the community, Obviously, I had several different names. When I first came in the late 80s, it was Abdul Ghaffar Muhammad. Then when we were in the school of Hebrews, it was changed to Yassar. Then when we went into right knowledge, it was changed by Dr. York to Neb Hafuz Atum Ray. And then the last name that he changed it to was Kanum Zahuti Atum Ray. So those were the different names I was known by in the different schools I went through from Ansar up until 2010, 11 in AEO.
Okay. Well, I want to give a professional opinion, professional statement here. You made statement about can people who engage in sexual predatory behavior, can it be cured of it? Brother, I'm here to testify as to what you said is not an opinion, but is damn near a fact. And the reason why I can say that is because I deal with people of criminal minded, and I've been doing it for over 18 years.
Wow.
I deal with gang members, street organizations, and I have dealt with psychopaths and people who have come back into the prison system over and over again that I have personally been involved in counseling, where they come back, they go out and they do the same types of crime. There is no cure for a psychopath. There is no cure for it. Now, there are therapies, but most of the people who engage in this kind of behavior, they will continue it because because even if you, for example, in some cases, they have said, well, let's castrate people, right? If you castrate a man, down in the privates, I've even dealt with a guy who actually cut his privates off because he thought that was going to cure him. It isn't just a sexual thing, but it's something in the mindset. So even if you castrate a person or take their balls off or whatever,
that's right.
It doesn't change their mindset. I have dealt with dozens and dozens of sexual predators over my profession. There is no cure to it. It is an ideology that is based on a worthness in the brain, the way they think. Someone like me and you or other brothers on here, we may see it as that's abnormal, but for people who believe in that stuff, they don't see it as abnormal. They see it as normal as me and you being into women of grown folk age. Right. So if I like women of grown age, ain't nobody gonna condition me to like anything other than what I'm conditioned to like already. Right.
Eric,
so I came up here just to validate, not that you needed validation,
no,
but I heard what you said, and I'm gonna say he's 100% right. And more people need to understand that you can't cure this type of thinking and behavior. So I say to you, I go by the name Information Man Show on YouTube. Peace and respect to you. Continue speaking the truth. Bring truth to the light out of the darkness that people want to hide in. Right? No play on blackness because blackness is beautiful, but people want to hide in this situation. And what this does is it brings it to the forefront. In our community, as you know, a lot of us don't want to talk about this. We want to hide it because we're ashamed of it. We have all these issues we haven't dealt with as a people.
You know what it is, brother?
But I would like you to explain.
I just want to say something real quick to the brother's point.
Hold on, DC.
I think we're living in a day and time where nobody wants to just take a firm stance on something. And my thing is this. I'm not saying my perspectives and stances and opinions are going to be in alliance and agreement with everybody. That's just, I'd be foolish to think that. But I think we all need to grow a pair of balls as men and put on our big drawers as women and be firm in our stance and not be ashamed of it, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's certain stances on certain issues. It's the old saying, if you don't take a stand, then where do you stand, period, and you're weak. I'm not afraid to express my thoughts on that. And I do understand not everybody's going to agree with that. And that's okay. But I just think what we're doing, this is therapeutic because we need to have these intelligent conversations. And I agree with what you said. And obviously I'm not going to question because you've witnessed years of that in your work. So who am I can't question that.
Yeah. But look, to piggyback, right? Information Man, right? This is community, right? Right, Mike? I've been asking you the questions all the time, right? So look, right? So to piggyback off of what the Information Man show said and what you're saying, right? This is why I'm saying, like, when we put our mindset in a person like a Polight now, right? So to deal with like a cult, right? Like even Information Man, after having years of history with this thing and dealing with this thing, we understand he's saying there's therapies, right? So imagine a mindset that has not gone through therapies, a mind like Polight's mind that believe in these things, and people that believe in people like a God. This is different than regular stuff now. So that thinking, he still believes in him because the way you believed in that. How is it going to deconstruct that, right? So I'm thinking like for him to be thrusted into the light after this now, right? Without really deconstructing, because people that usually go through things take a back away from certain things to get their mind right, to get their life like Mike had to probably do this, like Chuck, like Tarkinu Nupu, like certain people that been around certain things. You got to take a break from certain things
to see it,
to get your mind right. But we never seen Polight ever take a break from things. So he's already been thrusted straight into Hollywood, where we know a lot of that is even, you already know, it's slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
So do we think that doing that process, not saying that from him knowing him, just based on that process of being through a thinking like that and knowing other brothers maybe that haven't went through this right processes of taking your time and getting this time back for yourself and learning back and taking away from the light, do you think that he could have changed some of these thinkings? Do you think that he took the right steps to go about changing some of that thinking that he thought from before?
Right. I can't, from what I've seen after the fact, obviously there's some things that obviously I would question. Maybe he didn't make some of the right choices, but I do maybe understand also what led him to some of them choices from what I also did see, unfortunately, of what went on. Now, the other thing we have to factor into that equation, we don't know what Polight went through as a child. I bring this up because something that spoke volumes to me, I never saw it. I saw it recently because obviously with this R. Kelly thing, I saw that clip from 2018 when he was in Farrakhan's home singing I Believe I Can Fly. And I'm looking at the video, and what I saw there was a little scared but yet humble boy, and his soul and spirit was crying out for help. The man was sick. He was dealing with some shit. He never, to your point, he never really got the therapy or the time to deal with that. And I bring that up because when you said that, immediately it took me to that video. And I just saw that video the other day. And if anybody ever seen it, go watch it. It's like looking at R. Kelly as a little boy screaming out for help. So I'm saying that to say sometimes the individual makes drastic changes and they put up their shield around them. You know, I do believe all the flashy cars and the money, and that's great. Look, let me say this. By all means, we should be striving to be financially successful. Again, there's two things that I still can't understand become synonymous with being conscious, and being broke obviously has become one of them in certain circles. But I think a lot of those external things are the masks that may be putting up to just hide what's really going on inside his mind. So I do think not just him, anybody in that situation, same thing. I mean, you can use that money and power to hide behind it like R. Kelly did and others. So I do think there is a lot of truth to what you're saying, but to what degree, that's tough. We can only assume, assess, and evaluate because we don't know exactly what's going on in that person's mind. And it would be wrong for us to try to speak for them. But I do definitely think there's a lot of truth to elements of what you're talking about for sure, 100%.
What you can, what I can say is that you can give some educational inference to is that most people, well, let me say this. When people are predatory towards others in a sexual manner, right? There is enough data out there that shows that that's a person who might have been violated at some point in their own life. And usually people who have been violated physically or psychologically, they have the potential, right, to engage in the same behavior that they were abused by themselves. If I'm not mistaken, R. Kelly was a victim of some sort of abuse that was going on in his life at one point in time. Go figure that he's now got himself caught up in something. It doesn't surprise me from a professional point of view. And I'm not going to say that Polight had anything, but what I'm saying is, to me personally, when I look at this situation with him, that usually when guys like this get caught, with their hands in a cookie jar in this manner, there's a very good chance, there's a very high probability, potentially, possibly, that this ain't the first time they've done this. It's just the first time that they've got caught.
Correct.
Because usually when you're highly narcissistic in your personality traits, you feel that you're invincible, that you can do anything in the world, and that nobody can take you down. And you're intoxicated with this energy when you have people who almost worship you like you're a god and buy into everything that you say.
Correct. That's correct. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, information, man. I know you said you didn't have long. So before you go, can you speak on Uma as being the daughter of a cult leader and how she might be conflicted?
Well, she's automatically, I would say this because I want to be respectful. I don't know a lot about her. I can just say this. You automatically are conflicted, especially if depending on the relationship you had with that particular loved one, your mother, your father. You're in conflict because you say to yourself, this is the person that raised me, washed my butt when I couldn't wash my butt, fed me. So you're going to be in conflict because you don't want to see your family member in jail. And in some ways, you might want to block out what people are saying about that person. And even if you know deep down inside that some of what people are saying is true about your loved one, you still block it out because you still have some type of bond with them. But this depends on what your relationship is. If you grew up with a family member that treated you like a dog, you're going to have less sympathy and empathy for them versus if you have some bond. I think that she might have had some strong bond with her father. And who wants to hear people talking in a way that they see as negative about their loved one? It's called being in denial. I dealt with someone, there was a guy, I'm not going to name names. There was a guy that engaged in a tremendous crime, horrible crime. And his mother was in denial of his crime when she was coming to visit him. And even though the facts were laid all out in the court case, all the documents, all the evidence, the mother was still in denial and was almost like, what are you doing to my baby? You see what I'm saying? Even your parents will see you like that sometimes. So it's a deep situation when it comes to loved ones, very deep. If any of us had loved ones that were in a pickle, we would sort of in a little denial a little bit ourselves, depending on our mindset. And if we're able to sometime at some point say, you know what? Yeah, my father, my mother, they did do this shit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a tough thing.
It's a tough thing. It's a very tough thing. And like any of us, we're going to protect our family members. We're going to protect their legacy, their history when people are saying things that we don't want to believe or agree with. That's just facts.
Okay.
But
thank you.
Thank you for letting me come up for the short time that I'm here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. You have a tremendous guest here. I'm gonna sit back and listen and take in the knowledge and learn. It's about learning from these situations so that we don't continue to repeat that which is happening. We should all be learning from all of these things that are happening. We need to learn from it and do not repeat it, because if you do not learn from it, you're going to be doomed to repeat your past. If you do not learn and understand what happened in your past, you will be doomed to repeat it in your future is what I really should be saying. So thank you, everybody.
Right.
Appreciate peace and respect to you, my man.
Thank you.
To you as well.
And one community, you know I love you, brother. You're doing good work too. Take
care.
You,
brother. Appreciate you.
All right, brother. All right.
Okay, the porn bot thing has shown up in the chat. That means we are pushing up the algorithm. Let's keep hitting the like. Let's keep hitting the share. And you can't lie and told me you shared because I can see it when you do. It ain't nobody shared yet. Not one of y'all. You're supposed to be sharing so everybody can hear this.
I've shared in several groups.
Fastest mod. Hey, I've always been the fastest mod on YouTube. You all know that.
I put it in all my groups.
Acknowledge me as the fastest. So yeah. But let's continue on with the interview. Malik, you have questions. We want answers. Malik, you there?
In the meantime, right, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, it's community, right, bro? Look, so all right, after going through, because you went through many fields and walks of life, you know what I mean? You probably was raised a certain way, like me probably was raised at first, probably Baptist, Christian, whatever, from the house. And then you venture out, you know what I mean? Find other ways of life, build with different brothers, God bodies, different things. We start going up the chain, start building. What is your stance on like religion now? How do you feel about your children believing in religion, like if they believe in religion, or like how do you feel about religion now? Do you believe in a specific way of life now? How do you feel about your children believing in a specific way of life as well?
No, good question. Well, first and foremost, before I embarked on any other path of spirituality, I was born and raised Catholic, Christian, just like everybody else. Okay. I pretty much left that shit alone at an early age. And then probably at the age of 14, 15 is when I really started searching. And then obviously, believe it or not, the 5% Nation was the first thing I came across, because in my high school, there were many 5%ers. So I was intrigued with that for a while. And then obviously, if you remember back in the day in New York, the Dr. York posters would be up on all the poles. I would see those and then run into, the bookstore over there, 179th and Parsons. And here we are today. Where my stance is now, it's probably a little unorthodox. I'm not religious at all. I do, and again, people probably going to misinterpret this out of ignorance. I do study more along the lines now, dealing with which some call the occult, but people will hear that term and their mind will start wandering into negative areas. Like I saw somebody mention stuff earlier. They were saying some stupidity shit about the serpent, and they don't even understand what any of that stuff represents. We can attribute that to the Kundalini and other areas of spirituality, but I'm more in a very open, neutral stance of spirituality. I do also have a background, which some have tried to come out and attack me for that, dealing with voodoo, African witchcraft and magic. And regardless of your stance, I'm not ashamed of it.
You ain't saying that. We was talking before you jumped on here. Malik, say something so we know if we can hear you. See, your thing's moving, but I don't hear nothing.
Yeah, I can't hear
the volume on your device.
He got to go and come back in. Come on, continue, Mike.
Yeah. These, which I still don't understand in the conscious community, why that is not addressed as a powerful spiritual path. Even when you look in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's something called Egyptian Heka, which the Book of the Dead is nothing but a book of spells and magic. And really, that's where the power lies. People don't want to talk about this because they'll attribute this to all the negativity and evil based on their ideology and their perspective. Now, me personally, I couldn't care what your perspective is on it. But I'm dealing more with those sciences of alchemy, ancient Hermetic philosophy. I do, because that is part of my background, even before I came into the Ansars and the Wapian Nation. And I've had detailed discussions and other things that went on with Dr. York when it came to such as Yoruba practices, or what some might know in this country as Santeria/Ifa. But it goes even deeper than that. That's just on the surface. So I do believe there's higher level information out here that need to be explored. I believe religion are the lesser schools of these mysteries. I think personally, in my opinion, it's a waste of time on all these platforms where people are arguing over who was first, the Egyptians or the Hebrews. To me, it's all a waste of time and garbage, because what good is all this knowledge and information if you can't apply it to transform your life? Where's the work? All I'm asking in all these communities is, where's the body of work that brings the change? Yeah. What ritualistic spiritual work are we doing other than regurgitating a lot of shit that we read in books and having arguments and debates and fussing and fighting? How is this transforming your life? Other than people coming on YouTube, and having these arguments and debates. So my stance, I'm very open in my spirituality. I explore all aspects, whether it's historical information, ancient Egypt, Africa, the occult, alchemy, because I think we need to study it and learn it all and develop our own path of self-mastery, right? We see the problem is people want to be categorized. Like we have to have a title. I'm Kemetic. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. I'm this and I'm that. I'm none of those things. I want to make that clear. I'm not co-signing on any of that. So people that are going to have a problem with what I'm saying is somebody that's a follower and subscribes to a certain ideology.
Preach,
So I don't have issues with that. And
somebody asked,
that's your thing. And whatever. You may not agree with what I say, but I found my niche. I found my path. Mm-hmm. I don't answer to nobody. I don't think any group or organization has a lock on the truth and has the answers to everything. That's bullshit. Anybody that comes at you and says, I belong to this group and our way is the only way and it's the divine truth, stay away from that group. They have an agenda. Anybody that tells you, I found out over the years, things that I was told to stay away from and don't read, it turns out if I would have stumbled across those things earlier, I may not be in some of the situations I got into now. You understand?
Yeah. Can I chime in with you, bro?
Hold on, wait, QI, because Malik been trying to get up here for a minute. Malik, go ahead and see if we can hear you now. If not, just send me the message on Messenger and I'll ask it for you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, finally.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What's going on, brother? What's going on, man?
Salam alaikum. How you doing?
Salam alaikum. What's going on, brother?
Good. All right. So it's dealing with this subject right here. So basically, I know that you had put me on to in 78, 79, Pork wrote the Yoruba book, right?
That's right.
So I saw where his daughter the other day is talking about that she's in Ifa and Voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that are listening that may have heard it and it's kind of interesting, like, what's this about? Like, can you elaborate on the whole thing with Dr. Pork trying to deal with Orisha, and having a legba and now people trying to get into Orisha and all this nonsense? Like,
can I say something before you, bro? Can I say something before you, brother? Let me just say this. I study in depthly, and what I have learned is, like, just like with the African spirituality, there is, like you said, it's more to life and it's just uncovered. All we know is religion, which is substandard. And what I mean is religion is the bottom of the totem pole.
Big time.
Until you tap into self and then let yourself guide you instead of being guided by man or by being guided by religions or groups, then you lost. You know what I'm saying? Because they're talking about Yoruba. But to my knowledge, like right now, when I discovered that we're black people or melanated people or what are we? Because everybody got melanin, but we have what is it? Eumelanin.
But see, break down neuromelanin and neuromelanin. See, people focus.
Right.
People focus.
I like that the nerve melanin, because nerve seems to be the end all to be all. But like everybody has melanin, it's to different levels and different extents. But we have more melanin, and that's why they call us hue man. And hue is HUE. We can be superior, but what the sad part about it is we're not. Because some kind of way we've been, I don't know what has happened, but we've been led by other men or other people or other groups or other thoughts or whatever, instead of tapping into self. And just like we were saying, it's like about it's about tapping into self. It's self first. You can't do anything until you find self. And that's one of our problems. Most people don't find self, and then they look for self in groups.
Building up in the chat.
Yeah,
they look for self, through other people and other things and stuff like that.
Act like you didn't hear me right now.
Cults and religions,
you really gonna act like you don't hear me, and you just gonna keep on talking.
Who, me?
I just said we got a limited time with Eric. With
Mike tonight. My fault.
This is a Q&A. I dropped the ladder, but everybody's supposed to be orderly. Now Eric
I'm
was
sorry.
up here
I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
I'm just running.
But Venom been waiting. He said, "What year did you set the cast in the Masonic?" He said the Masonic Lodge. I'm sorry, I'm butchering that. But
what was the question about the Masonic Lodge?
What year did you set in the east of the Masonic Lodge?
You talking about? Let me make something clear. When we did the degrees, I went and redid. I'm still a current member of Boynton Lodge 236 here in Florida. But as far as in the Nuwaubian Nation, I sat in the East. I'm going to say that was between 2005 and 2008, 2009. That's when I sat in the East, if that's the question that he's asking. But after I left the Nuwaubian community, the Dr. York movement, because I found out later there were some things in the degrees we did were inconsistent with Masonic protocol. Yeah. And let me say this, remember, York's Lodge was not officially recognized by any Masonic body. Okay, let me just put that out there. Now we were told some bullshit and on some charter from Cairo, Egypt. And see, our line of rebuttal to that back then was, oh, we are sanctioned by the Grand Lodge in Cairo, Egypt. It's all that was psychological wordplay. Yep. So I redid my 3. I went through the Blue House. I've gone through the Scottish Rite. I went and redid my Shriner stuff after I left the movement, not because so much that I was really into it, but I wanted to get the experience and do it the right way. So now when I'm teaching brothers that are Masons or having discussions, I have both perspectives now. I have what I went through in the movement, and then I have also what I went through in so-called what's accepted as a recognized Masonic body or a chartered body here in this country. I've visited lodges outside of this country. I've been to lodges in the Caribbean and other places in the country. And I can tell you this, if any Nuwaubian went to any Masonic lodge with the card and they were questioned, they would not be allowed entrance. I can tell you that for a fact, because they wouldn't be recognized, and they'll have a rebuttal for that. And they'll say some foolishness. Oh, but our lodge is chartered by such and such. We don't need that. Well, if you want to travel and enter any lodge, you do need that. Okay.
3 or 4, bro. Just have 3 or 4 letter or both.
Right. Say it again.
3 or 4 letter.
Okay,
or
good
both.
question.
Okay.
Now, what the sister's talking about.
Finish with his question, though.
Right, and let's get back to Brother Malik, because we cut him off.
Go ahead, Malik.
Let me just on the letter thing.
About an hour of struggling through the internet.
I'm sorry, but let me throw this out there. When you're saying letter, just to verify what the sister is talking about, you have AF and AM, Ancient Free and Accepted Masonry. You have F and AM, Free and Accepted Masonry. You have Prince Hall. You have International. There are differences in the structures of when you go through those lodges, because if anybody's ever been through for example, a military lodge or a Prince Hall lodge, it's not going to be the same going through a 3-letter lodge. And what I was talking about earlier, why I didn't want to talk about the degrees, because I don't want to disrespect any Masons, because it just wouldn't be right to get into detail. There's certain things you can talk about, not because it's any conspiracy. Look, anybody that believes this bullshit, the Illuminati and all that. My question is this: if you're not a Mason, if you think there are people in these secret orders that have all this power, my question to you would be, 1, are you a Mason? Are you a Knights of Templar, a Shriner, or any of those things? And if not, where are you getting your information from? And if you're only getting your information from some YouTube videos, some book, then what again is your claim to make those statements? I can tell you none of that shit that people think goes on at the Masonic Lodge goes on. It's all conspiracy, because people feed off of that nonsense, and they get it's just ridiculous. But that's what she meant when she was talking about the letters.
Please go deep, bro. I need the deep. Go deep. Please go deep. Let everybody answer their questions.
Now this is why I close circle.
I know. I'm sorry, Cash. I'm just telling them to go deep on everything.
This isn't a one topic thing. We've already asked Mike to come back. We can't pick every question out of his head in one night.
Right,
and
but let's
give us 57 lectures.
I didn't want to be disrespectful to Brother Malik, so let's get back to him real quick.
Look, this is supposed to be the neutral zone, so ain't nobody gonna go hard for nobody else's beliefs over here.
Mm-hmm.
We already this is how it's been run for years and years. It is, ain't nothing changed now.
Yes.
So in essence, I asked the question. I make the statement because I know that you and I and some other people who are watching were initiates.
Correct.
And so this is offensive. This is highly offensive, especially coming from Pork. So if you could just elaborate on this.
Yes. Right. I remember your question clearly. Remember, Dr. York's brother Obar is also into a lot of these passive African spirituality. If those remember on the land, York had told me that he was a son of Obatala, that he did and was into some of those practices. Now, a lot of members will refute that. There was work at the time when the case was going on being done, where some members branched out on their own to try to work with Yoruba priests to get him released from prison. People may or may not know that. Then there's this contradiction that comes on the back end because people out of ignorance don't understand it. They think that dealing with African spirituality, voodoo, African sorcery, witchcraft, they hear those terms and go, oh my God, that's so negative and evil. How can you say that? Well, if you believe in African spirituality, how can you not include that? Because that's really where the power lies. You can sit around all day and regurgitate shit from books. It don't mean shit to me. Okay, because if you cannot produce no results in any of the work you're doing, all you are is a walking encyclopedia. So when it comes to that Yoruba, the Yoruba thing, in regards, and I know, as you said, Leah had mentioned that because Leah is familiar with that spiritual path and has practiced it. We've had discussions with that, and I've went into visits with Leah, as I discussed on Sarnetta when we went in, and so I know her to a certain degree at that time period when stuff was going on. But York asked me to send him books on how to make an Elegua. He asked me what would be the best books for him to learn about Yoruba, and I sent him the Osha book. There's 2 volumes to it, Osha 1 and 2. He asked that because he wanted, Leah, I guess, had written him some letters at the time, and some other members had questions about Yoruba, and I guess he wanted a source that he can look into. And then the next thing I found out, there's a letter that pops up, and I believe it was to her about how to make an Elegua. And when I looked at it, it came straight out of the Osha book, okay? So I'm just saying this is the kind of manipulation that went on. But you know what tends to happen, whether it's York or the Nuwaubian movement or anybody, not just York or the Nuwaubian movement, when somebody doesn't know something about it, it's easier just to attack it and discredit it because I don't know nothing about it. And usually that's done out of fear and ignorance. And that's the #1 disease that's running rampant on this planet is ignorance. Because people will say shit about things they have no knowledge of. So because they don't know about it, let me just discredit it. So when it comes to Yoruba and that whole thing and their stance on it, and when York you got to remember when York put that book out in the late 70s, that was coming from an Islamic. So we have to keep that in mind. When you look at it, remember on the 19 classes, take the Elohim, he called Dr. Ben a devil, right? You can pull that up. Anybody seen it knows what I'm talking about. But then here we are a couple of years later, bigging up Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Bigging up Egypt.
And he asked to bring Dr. Ben down.
Yeah.
I talked to Mark Thompson myself because Mark Thompson was a real close friend of Dr. Ben. And I went to Mark Thompson because, Mark Thompson was with WOL. So, when we was doing the radio show. So I said, can you think you can get on Dr. Ben to come down to Tamaray? And he said, I will never go down there and give that man no shine.
Exactly.
He tried
but Chuck, you know as well as I know, and Brother Malik, you know as well as I know. Here's the excuse. That was a school we were in. See, they get a pass anytime. See, the only answer they're going to have to that was the school at that time. So that's the justification. See, York always went with whatever was hot, whatever he had to morph into to get people interested. That's what we did. But here's the thing. When any school we were in, I've said this before in the past, and obviously it's he always placed himself as the highest deity, right? If it was the Ansars, he was Al-Kut, right? Or Melchizedek. And when we were in the school of right knowledge, he was Marduk, right? No matter what school, when we were in School of Egypt, he was Atum-Re, right? Think of the psychological profiling that does on an individual, okay? So he made sure in every school we go into, he is the highest entity or deity, okay? So I'm saying this because that's all part of the perspective when something is attacked, say, as far as the Yoruba, because if they're not dealing with it and they don't know about it, then let's just discredit it. Oh, all they do is sacrifice animals and blood. Right. But yet, when you look, I've always brought this up to Nuwaubians. When you look in the temple of Amun-Ra, you can pull this up. Anybody that studies Egypt, there was animal sacrifice in Egypt. You just need to look hard. When people have a problem with animal sacrifice or blood sacrifice, it's all in the Torah. Any Hebrew that wants to debate and say that's evil and negative, this and that, shit. That God of the Torah loved the smell of dead animal flesh and blood because he required tons of animals to be sacrificed and the blood to be splurted on all 4 corners of the altar. Why do you think when you see a Catholic priest, an old school Catholic priest, he lifts the chalice and the communion wafer and he goes to all 4 corners? What do you think he's reenacting when he does that shit? It's that tradition when you look in your Bible. All that shit is encoded there because when they look at certain things that they can't explain, then they go off on a tangent about what they fear. So the whole thing that Malik, like you say, to somebody that practices Yoruba, the book is disrespectful. And the only thing I can say at that time, and I read that book in the 80s, so that came out a few years before I actually came in, but I do remember stumbling across it. But I remember on the land, there were a good brother of mine, Curly, another good brother, Calvin, some Dominican brothers. And we went inside the temple and we bring drums in there, and there was some stuff that we had done in there. And York had a lot of questions about that path. He was asking a lot of questions about Obatala. So I'm saying all that to say he was very familiar with it. So I think the knocking of it is hypocritical because there's no monopoly on that. That's one doctrine that they don't really have an understanding of, because I've heard some really ignorant statements. So I think a lot of that comes from ignorance, Brother Malik. I think it just comes from a
couple of people that have asked a couple of the same question, and I know this question always gets pulled out, and everybody's gonna laugh, but there are new people with us. Can you and Chuck please tell us about Pickle Man?
About what?
Pickle Man.
I know that's Brother Malik's thing for years.
Give it to Malik.
Yes, Malik would fall off before we.
He was the one that took that and made it.
Yo, listen, man. When you look, you got to understand, when you're looking at the holy tablets, okay, when you're looking at a lot of York's books, see, here's the thing. I'm going to keep it honest with you. I'm going to keep it 100. I have no problem that no matter how bizarre or non-bizarre it is, if York would actually give the credit to his source, okay? Here's the thing. A lot of that stuff came from sci-fi books, and it's just like me and Chuck were talking about the Kabbalion by the three initiates. Yeah, but if anybody, all you got to do to show plagiarism to the fullest, just get the Sacred Wisdom of Tahuti written by Dr. York, and get the Kabbalion by the three initiates, which is the 7 Hermetic Principles of Tahuti. Lay them side by side.
He was into cartoons and all of that.
All that shit.
Planet Risk came from a cartoon. You know, I found it out today by listening to Tasha. Somebody said that on Tasha's live. He seemed like he was very in depth into cartoons, and most of the knowledge that he's
cartoons out there go day because he had nothing to do because people collected money for him. Girl,
was cartoon stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what's so funny. You know what I'm saying? It's like a trip. That's why I appreciate you, Malik. You know, you got to keep coming back to Tasha and all of us, because I got a lot of questions because you're well studied. And, you know, I'm just going to say that and back out because I don't want my sister to jump all over me no more.
Look, I just want one thing I see here real quick to address. There's a statement here that Catholicism has nothing to do with Hebrew. I just want to address something. That's not entirely true. They are influenced by Hebrew traditions because the Catholic priesthood is based after the order of Melchizedek. Because when you go into your Bible, the whole Catholic priesthood is based after the order of Melchizedek. Anybody that studies real Catholicism will tell you, why am I saying that? Real simple. Because when you go into your Bible in Genesis chapter 14, verse 18, that's where you see Melchizedek when Abraham comes back for the slaughter, providing a tenth of everything he has, which, by the way, is where the pastors get given 10% or tithing from. You see this also, this Melchizedek character pop up in Hebrews 5 and Hebrews chapter 7. You see him in Psalms chapter 110, verse 4, Ancient of Days, no father, no mother. The priesthood, the wine, what they call in the bread of transubstantiation. What I was saying about the priest gesturing, he initiates and mimics because remember, the bread and the wine is supposed to be symbolic through transubstantiation of the wine being turned into blood and the bread, the flesh. That's what they teach you in Catholicism. It's called transubstantiation. Look it up. So an old school priest, not the newer ones, you got to watch. When they do it, they'll take the chalice or the host when they lift it, and then you got to watch real quick. They'll go to all four corners. That is a tradition that comes from the Torah when the Levites would sacrifice animals and they were commanded by their bloodthirsty God to drip blood on each corners of the altar. That's what I meant. So what I'm saying is there's an influence in Catholicism with Hebrew doctrine. I'm not saying it's the same. Obviously, it's not. But there's a high influence there. I just want to throw that out there. That's all.
Okay, if somebody said, dang it, I'm sitting up here fighting the webcam trolls and I forgot the question. Oh, yeah, Malik's supposed to answer about Pickle Man. Is he still up here? No, he done fell off. Eric, you had a question. Go ahead and ask Mike, and then Malik will probably jump back up because the chat wants a thorough description, synopsis of Pickle Man. And Malik is the man to give it to him.
Peace.
I gotta take a pause for the call, so I'm gonna put myself on mute while Eric asks his questions. Chuck is in charge till I get back.
I can grab the holy tablets and show you a picture of Pickle Man. It's
cartoon. Like we just gotta get to the basics.
Every time they come out with the daggone pictures, it don't matter how ridiculous.
Look.
It's cartoon.
Listen.
Come on now.
Listen,
how long
in a nutshell, listen. Let me say this in a nutshell. York put the image. He had taken it from another publication. Does not cite, of course, where that publication came from, and he added that image in his book. In particular, the Is God an Extraterrestrial? On that page, he has the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Predator, and the Pickle Man. Okay, in that configuration there, he makes mention of the Pickle Man, but he gives nothing historic about it. No trace, no path, nothing. It's just there. And I put it in an article because it was a comical idea just for anyone to even mention a name, the Pickle Man, in conjunction with the Predator and the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's all comical. It was more satirical in nature. So let me finish.
Okay.
So that was where I put that question to Nuwapians, because it was a ludicrous thought that York would even put it there in a book that's supposed to be about right knowledge. So when I ask people to confront them with it, is to ask them about something as ridiculous as that when it's supposed to be in a publication that is giving you the facts.
Chuck, let me throw into what you're saying too. Now you're going back to the early to mid 90s. Now remember, there was 2 magazines where a lot of that stuff came out of. They're not in circulation no more, but you can Google it. It's called UFO Universe and UFO Library.
Right.
A lot of that shit, York had access to all those books, Majestic 12, Area 51. All that stuff is out there. You see, nothing is new. It's only new in the sense you may never have heard of it. So it's new to somebody that never heard of it. You got to understand, we were in a cult mindset at that time. So we were fascinated by it. We got to keep that in mind. As comical as the shit is now, we could say that because, like the brother said earlier, the brother
everybody
Morpheus
doesn't understand.
Right. You had to step outside
in a comical manner.
Yes.
2 steps.
Let me just say, right quick, Chuck, so you'll know.
Go ahead.
Right quick, Chuck, so you'll know. It's like what y'all have to, like I said, let me tell you what you were missing, Chuck. It's like this, because I'm gonna bring you on my channel too. And it's a church cult type of field. And they need to know this because this is bigger than what they know. They don't even understand. But at the same time, let me get to the point and get back. It's just like this. What you have to realize is that you're higher intellect because you had to be, because of the simple fact that you had to dispute some comical cartoon, some truth, and all of that. You know what I'm saying? It's all of that mixed into one. So you're of a higher knowledge, but the average person out here is not. And the average person out here does not know how to critically think. So you have to break that stuff down all the way to the bare essence for people to understand. You have to say cartoon. You have to say, and one of the things y'all missing is York did not do most of his books. Most of his books was done by those young underage girls that he molested, that was in the office, that worked in the office. Because I heard Tariq
we have Chuck over here all the time. We miss nerves.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, so those points have to be. What I'm saying, Chuck, is those points have to be brought out as well.
Yeah, I understand.
A lot of his stuff he didn't even know about. He was given a piece of paper to say what he needed to say to be in alignment with what he was teaching. It wasn't stuff that he had came up with it on his own. It was his staff, a staff of underage girls, artists, and different things of that nature that gave him his perspective.
All right, but to that I would say, hold on, right, QI?
Go ahead.
Hold on, because remember, we still got to go, and we want to make our things quick and give questions to Mike so we could go in and out and respect Mike.
Yeah, and come back, Mike.
We don't want to go into a
Mike.
teaching. Listen, though. All I'm going to say is this. To that, I would say this one thing. Look, to the one thing, you might say the underage girl that wrote the book too, but we heard from Uma say herself that my mom also was writing a lot of these books and things like that as well. So it's much more people, it's much more thought that go into many things that's going on.
I ain't just saying underage. Right? I'm saying I know for underage from the victims speaking out and telling their perspective. But you know what I'm saying is York didn't do it. It was plagiarism. And most of that stuff was handed to him. It wasn't his own work. That's what I'm saying.
No, he just went back over it and vetted it after
that none of that was York's own work.
See, let me just add this. Nothing is ever going to change for people, period, in spirituality until we give up these old paradigms. Nothing will change.
Okay, Mike, we have a question that's been asked several times in the chat. Yeah. Do you have a YouTube channel? And if so,
yes, I do. But I will warn you, it's probably not going to be in alliance with your so-called conscious community thumpers. I just want to make that clear. I really personally don't care because I don't need to align my spirituality up to their standards because I can refute.
You are
exactly. So I want to make that clear. Yes, the YouTube channel is Primordial Chaos. 2 words, Primordial Chaos. If you don't understand the occult, if you don't understand left-hand path, voodoo, African witchcraft, sorcery, it's not going to be a channel for you. I stand firm on what I do because I get results. I don't care what people's opinions are. I don't care what their thoughts are. It's irrelevant to me. I'm out of that circle. So you can't.
Hold on. With 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folk up here now. You 6.
Let me just tell people real quick.
No, you've been let me telling for about 30 minutes now. Mike's time is limited. You want to go deep delving, and tonight ain't the night for that. We want Mike to come back. We don't run him to run him off because we done tried to suck him dry like.
I'm sorry, Mike. I don't want to run you out, but I like you.
I keep telling you, we ain't gonna get everything we want in one night.
I agree with the sister. Let's try to stay. I mean, we can't hash everything out in one night.
All the major questions we can. Yeah. We brought Mike on here to ask questions about Polight and the York connection, and that stuff. And y'all want to go to other places. That's when you ask him, can he come to your channel for a discussion?
See, this is what I'm saying. Again, I'm not judging the person, uncanny mage. See, that's another misconception. People hear again, we got to get out of these interpretations. People will hear the word occult, which is just a Greek word that means hidden. I know you made a statement maybe on what you came across that not all occult information, some are and could be pedos, just like in the conscious community, you got a lot of pedophiles, African Bambaataa, etc. So we have to be careful when we make those statements. Maybe what you've come across and experienced, yes, but I'm not dealing with any of that. What people might think with the satanic panic back in the 80s and all that crazy stuff.
We got a Polight question in the chat.
Yeah.
What was the name of do you know the name of the magazine that Polight was selling?
You know what? I do remember it because it was actually a newsletter. And I do remember at the time there was a debate whether he should keep putting that out because I remember York said to him, be careful, don't cut the branch that you sit on. I think what he was putting out in it, York wasn't 100% for it from what I do remember. Wasn't it the Ankh, something Ankh, if I'm not mistaken? I can't remember the name offhand.
Is it the Golden Ankh? Did he name his newspaper the Golden Ankh as well?
It might have been that because I heard somebody mention that earlier. I do remember it was a newsletter / newspaper. I do remember that.
So the newspaper was named, Information Man Show said he would love for you to come over to his channel sometime. So,
yeah, sure.
If you would type in the chat, I'll go ahead and give you a wrench and you can put your email in there and you can drop the link so the mods can rotate it.
Yeah, okay.
And then y'all can email each other and hook up. See, we done made another YouTube connection. Give it up for the Treehouse family. It happens every time. We're matching up YouTubers with
salute.
Yeah, but I remember the newsletter. I can't recall the name of it though, but I do remember at that time he did have a newsletter.
Probably the Golden Ankh because he started that company.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Oh Jesus! Hold on, where my eye drops at? Yes, he is, Leonard. And we want him to come back. So I want y'all to show appreciation in the chat. For anybody that's new, when we have closed circle conversations, you're going to treat this as you would treat anybody in a public setting, and you will give them the respect of such.
Mike, can you please come back? Because we love you.
I love you. I love you too. Well, that ain't directed at you, boo. That's the whole chat for the new people, you know.
We need that knowledge, Mike. So we need to come back.
Every time somebody comes out to speak out, everybody wants to jump on them. They don't want to come.
Right. But let me just say this. If you're not willing to challenge, I mean, the stuff that you got to be willing to challenge your ideologies. You got to be willing to challenge some things that you stand firm on, because you're going to find out. You're going to find out as you really start to study and grow, a lot of the shit that you thought was correct.
Can you explain again? Because Venom said he still doesn't
Don't
get
be scared, Mike. We mixed.
Hold on,
mixed, Mike.
Venom said he still doesn't get how York was sending all this mail to Polight. But he wasn't.
Okay, but we have to understand this. I don't know that person, their connection, and what they know. Let me stress this. When York was first arrested, I don't know how long this person goes back, what their involvement is with the community in York or not. I don't know if they're going on hearsay. I'm telling you, this is how it was and how it got to where it is at the moment. Right now, yes, majority of his right and privileges are cut off except to a select few family members and legal. But prior to that, it was wide open. It was many people, not just Polight, not just myself. There are many people that can produce. Hold on, I'm gonna show you something for an example. You guys got 1 minute?
Go ahead.
I'm just to give you an example. Hold on.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Hada.
And real fast, because how does the Polight support in Nuwapu today? One thing is for sure, that in the various circles of the Nuwapian cult, they're all attacking Polight at the moment. You have different YouTube channels where the representatives or quasi representatives of the organization are all condemning Polight. You may have Ramesses Richardson, aka Prince York, who holds his support for Polight. But for the most part, right now, Polight is a dirty word within the Nuwapian cult.
Okay, and then Muhammad said, can you confirm, or are you privy to the fact that members from Bushwick community would go to libraries and get a lot of the books or cut out pages from some books so that they couldn't find the original source? Oh Lord, you done gotta. So who released his app? That's gotta be a troll. That's got to be a troll. If it's you, hop your butt on up here. What? You got some answering to do for why I'm a bitch. Tell your girl to quit running around talking about people's deceased children.
Wait a minute. Did I lose something?
That is in the chat, allegedly.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's him or not, because most of his accounts are blocked. If it's him, he's going to jump up here. Oh, sister, why you talk about me like that? Come on.
But going back to what I was saying, but yeah, that was right now, nobody, I ain't gonna say nobody because people are individuals, but
that's a troll.
Collectively they're going after him because to them his behavior has brought a bad name to the already dirty name of the cult. So now they've moved to make another individual synonymous with pedophilia, which is one of their main guys, which is Deuce York, or his actual name is Damon Pryor.
All right,
so now he's the beast in this game now. So
let me just show you this to the person that's asking the mail. I'm gonna put them up on the screen. These are just some that I dug out. These are all letters from York. Okay. You see I can give you the dates. I can open them up. Okay. I just grabbed, these are just some of them. Okay. See this? These are all from York. Okay. List can go on and on. I mean, I can throw 50 of them up right here. Just for now. And the time period, and let me open it up so you can see that. Just so you can see their actual letters. Him, drawings, writing in Nuwapic. So you're going to say that I made these up? I did these myself? I wrote these all myself? and I have time, I'll even read some of them. Some of them I won't because I just won't. Okay, I can
That's
go through.
not him. That is a troll.
Okay, see that? So these are fake. I guess this is a conspiracy. This is not real, right? See, that's what stupid people will say.
Yeah, anybody that's ever been around, they know who are Mike.
No, but I'm just saying that to say, and it's not. I'm not discrediting the person that asked that question. What I'm trying to say is, at first, his communication was wide open. Many people got letters. Many.
Yeah, I had plenty of them.
Okay, but when people were doing foolish things, communicating and talking about, as somebody mentioned, literal business, talking about the exchanging of money. They said that the writing in Nuwapic was writing in codes. That was one of the reasons why they shut down the writing privileges, because of stuff like that. So that changed. So yes, right now, at this moment, you can no, his writing privileges are suspended except to those 3 or 4 people he has on the list and his legal team. But it wasn't always like that in the first several years of his incarceration. And even the current members that are around now will tell you that. That's facts. So Polight at that time, and again, I said it before and I'll say it again. At the time Polight was around, his privileges were not suspended. He was getting letters. I can verify them because I saw them. Okay. Now, you don't have to believe that or not. I can't force you to believe that. So that's your choice, whether you want to accept that or not. I can only speak on my experience, what I saw and what I experienced. Whether anybody agrees with it or not, I'm sorry, that's all I could do. That's up to you. So I'm just going to leave that one there.
Sat 10 wants to know why you have those letters from Polight.
These aren't letters from Polight. These were letters that York sent directly to me. Let's clarify that. I don't have any letters that Polight got from York, but Polight did share some of that information with me, is what I'm saying. Not all, but I seen and I know he got communication from York. These are all personal letters to me. That's why I have those letters, and I have them for reference.
Oh, snap, son. What do you want, sir? Frank, is that you? If not, I'm going to drop you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes, and same thing like Brother Mujahid 72 is saying. York would also send letters to the bookstore. Like, for an example, in 2010, 11, when they would have Blue Lodge meetings inside the Brooklyn bookstore, sometimes he would send a letter addressing the whole craft. Okay. So he's 100% correct. So again, when you're asking a question, you need to be asked and be clear on what perspective are you coming from? What time frame are you referring to? And most importantly, identify your involvement or your stance or not stance. Or you're just asking out of curiosity because you want to know. But that sounds like when somebody's asking questions like that, they're asking because they have a preconceived answer that they're looking to hear and they're not getting it. So, then it goes another route. But it is, whatever it is.
What up, radio? Let me hip you to something. You might be new over here. These closed circle conversations are neutral. Now, they nice enough to come out and answer questions. So be nice enough to not do all that. If you got to say something, keep it to yourself. Say it in your room. But be polite while they're here. Not that kind of polite, but Polite polite. Oh, speaking of, I have totally forgot. Earlier, Venom asked me, did you know anything about Amunet? But I told him that you said he came in with Polight. So that would be my
I only know Amunet from being around at that time. That Polight came down here one time when I had the bookstore here in South Florida, and he was passing through, and they stopped through the bookstore. That was the last physical time I saw him before that event or that lecture he did up in Brooklyn. So I only know of Amunet based on Polight. Again, I can't speak on her personal life because I don't know. I'd be a hypocrite if I spoke on her life like that.
And Hada said, who sends your commissary money?
Family members, to the last of my knowledge. There has to be somebody approved to put it on there. To my knowledge, I mean, it used to be before any restrictions. I couldn't tell you now, but back then we had the ability. Anybody could have really did it back then. So I couldn't tell you what's that situation now. I don't know who puts money on his commissary right now. You'd have to ask a current member, but I remember back.
Oh, it is Frank. Hi, Frank. You came over to the CCC TV bitch channel, huh? Yeah. Then you drop off again. The green room's quick and dirty version. If you made the take and you was at the top, you get to take your lady to the green room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, that was part of the psychological profile. Now, let me be clear. That was in the community living. Okay. Now, when we disbanded as a community and started opening up bookstores, there was more, obviously, freedom. A lot of that stuff, we had the more freedom to live to a degree normal lives. But as Ansars, yes, keep in mind, you moved into a community where they had a female or women's bait, a brother's bait, and a children's bait. Now, I bring that up earlier. Ask yourself the question, what was really the need for that? We thought it was some Islamic tradition, and that was part of, being a Sudanese Ansar and all this other stuff. We would justify this stupidity. But yes, you had to turn in a certain amount of quota if you wanted time in the green room to have personal time with your wife. That's a fact. That's no secret. Any Ansar will tell you that, current or ex. And I don't think that's a secret. That's nothing new. You got to understand. Look, I know brothers that got their asses whooped for not turning in. They would get. I remember, and Rabbi Hamza. Everybody knows Hamza, Elder Hamza, who ran for a short period of time the Spring Valley community. I remember late at night, if you didn't turn in, I remember there was a brother who used to pedal out in Jersey, and he came in late, tried to sneak in, slept. Man, they came barging in the brother's bait 2:30 in the morning and woke him up, beat his ass because he didn't turn up no money. So we were in that environment where, yes, and if you were a top peddler, you were the shit. You got the respect. If you had struggled with making quota or making money, usually you didn't last long, and more than likely you either voluntarily left or you got kicked out. Okay.
1 second, Mike. Sanetta, we trying to get questions out of Mike, and his time is limited. So if you want to talk, we'll make time for you tomorrow. Okay. We'll talk to you tomorrow, Frank. Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, there is truth to that green room. But now again, we have to really ask this: when we're looking at it from outside the box, what was the point of that? But I look at it now. You got to look at it. Place yourself in a position where the women are separated. They're not around the men all the time, and majority of the time, the man that you see 90% of the time is York. You do the math. What do you think is going to happen? You do the math. It's just common sense.
I don't know why I never caught that one. Anybody can look at that one.
Think about it. If I have the power to keep you as a man from your wife and vice versa as a wife from his husband,
here comes somebody again.
It's psychological.
Oh, this is Malachi. Okay, I was finna say. Hey,
so how did you control that, Mike?
All right. So when I came up, and one thing that I'm glad of. Look, I can only speak for me. I didn't play none of that shit. And me and my wife, again, I'm talking about my wife that passed away in 2011, my first one. Look, I wasn't stupid. When we were making money, there was another thing that went on in the female bait with women. If other brothers were giving their wives more because they were making more, providing, then the women would hate on that sister. So I would always make sure my wife had all her sanitary needs she needed. Excess food. I'm not stupid. I used to store and hide motherfucking food in there. I ain't dumb. You understand? Even though I was doing what I was doing, but I wasn't.
You Puerto Rican?
I put my hands in somebody else's pocket before I go starving.
Are you Puerto Rican?
No, I described my nationality before I began. Sicilian and Lebanese. I just want to make that clear. Sicilian and Lebanese. Now, how I came into the doctrine, if you go look in New York's books, in his What Race Was Jesus, his original Leviathan scrolls, he describes all ethnicities that make up the Nubian family. That's how they got me to get interested in the doctrine. And that's in there. It shows Sicilians,
so
Japanese.
You have no ties with America, indigenous America.
Say it again?
You have no ties with indigenous America.
Well, when you say indigenous America, what are you talking? Be a little more specific.
Well, I'm Mayan. I'm a Mayan descent.
Okay, I got you.
Mayan descent.
I got you. Well, it depends, because when you look at and you trace your ancestry and your DNA tree, there is how it gets there. There is some Peruvian in there, and there's Peruvian tribes that do have a direct link to whether you're talking about the Aztecs, the Mayans, or the Olmecs, or any of those indigenous tribes. Yes, in that sense, there is some of that in the bloodline, but most of it goes back to either Northeast Africa or the Southeast Mediterranean.
But you do realize that everybody does not have African, right?
Most definitely, and I'm not sitting up here. Obviously, you can look at me and tell I'm not an African.
Right. I just want to clarify.
Well, no, I'm just saying that, and nor am I trying to portray myself as. Let me make that clear. And look, whether anybody likes it or not, I don't care. It's irrelevant to me. But I do believe. I'm saying it's irrelevant to me in the sense it doesn't affect.
Okay, we got two questions in the chat.
Yeah, keep it going.
Venom says, how old was Polight when you first met him? If you don't know the exact age, like late 20s, early 20s.
He had to be in his early 20s. To be honest with you, I don't even know. But he definitely, I would say, from my estimation, I would have to say early 20s, very early 20s, most definitely.
Okay. And then somebody said, do you know Ezekiel?
Ezekiel who? You got to be.
Chuck, do you know Ezekiel's old name?
Where is he from? Give me a little more info.
He's from New York. He was up there at the Bushwick location around the shooting time.
He must have been by another name. The Ezekiel.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. What was his Ezekiel? That's got to be an older school name. What was
Ezekiel's about probably, I'd say, late 30s, early 40s. Who's Chuck? I think that. Oh, that's Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I mean, about your loss.
Yeah, because that's Marcus. Yeah, he knew my wife well, man. I appreciate that, brother. I thought I told you about that. I thought you knew.
Malik, send me your question in the messenger. I think Chuck might have got a phone call or something. That's what that sounded like.
My apologies.
Mike.
Somebody said he did security for him. I think at the bookstore. But he went by another name then. I don't remember his answer.
If he did security for York at the bookstore, you got to be going back because York left the Brooklyn bookstore. There's a lot of information. I want to clarify the timelines I've been hearing in different platforms. People are confused when the schools changed. York left Brooklyn and Bushwick and set up Jez and Abba. The Ansar officially disbanded, I'm going to say around 91. Before we started going, 91, because the 19 classes took place in 91.
They say he was on Polight security team.
Oh, no.
Grades.
Okay, I think you're talking, if I know the brother that you're talking about, and again, a lot of that was formed after when Polight became a little bit bigger. If you look at some of the older videos, I think you're talking about that tall, kind of dark-skinned brother, if that's who I think you're talking about. I didn't know him on a personal level, no. I did, if that's what they're asking. I didn't know him on a personal level.
Okay, Maze, if you want to ask anything or say anything, you're more than welcome to jump up.
You got to jump up. I just want to ask him one quick thing. You said the Kabbalion, right? The Kabbalion, and then you said it was a book that was comparison, something Tahuti. What book was that?
If you get a copy of Dr. York's Sacred Wisdom of Tahuti,
okay, sacred,
and get a copy of the Kabbalion by the three initiates, which basically is the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. And word verbatim, there's nothing changed. Just look.
I put it on my website. It's right there.
Yeah, Chuck has put a post up.
Let me get it with you too, Chuck. Because then you also told the UFO universe. You said the UFO library,
and also Science of Breath. Also, Chuck has put this up. Science of Breath by Yogi Rag Chamraka is the same book that your copy word verbatim, the breath. And anybody that refutes it, before you refute it, go get both books and lay them side by side. And simply answer the question, how are these identical if this one came before that? And look, let me make this clear. I have no problem in a sense that York did that as long as he would have credited the source. That's all. Because a lot of people, mention, it's not a problem I had that you use somebody else's information. I think the problem people have, now some people from a scholarly standpoint will have a plagiarism issue. I get that. But I think what the problem most people get upset about is when you try to make it look like it's something new you're coming with. So Nuwapians will get defensive and attack you and say you're this and you're that. But it's wrong to say that this is your stuff, that you came up with this, as if you're teaching something new. But you have to simply, before you get all up in your panties in a knot, get both, place them side by side, and ask, how is a book written in the early 1900s by Yogi Rag Chamraka called Science of Breath, and then you put out a book called The Breath, and they're identical? Explain before you get mad.
In other words, if you're a true intellect, you keep an open mind always, regardless of the teacher, master teacher, or the book. But I have a question for you and Chuck right quick. It's just like this, okay? Shoot, I almost forgot. I might have to come back to it, but it was like dealing with spirituality and the difference between African and, if y'all have gotten into American spirituality, what's the difference? And then I just want to see how y'all overcame the cult knowledge, because York does bring it. I can't say he brings it. He brings it all because he comes from all schools of thoughts. So that I have to commend you all, because I can see how it wouldn't be easy to overcome what York brings, and I know that he did that by design.
No,
so
you're right.
What is it that brought you to a higher level of information? And I don't want to go too deep, because I know we ain't.
Soldier, please be respectful.
But just drop a little something on
coming in to try me now.
What got you there? What got you to that next level?
Simple. Just I had to let go of all those old paradigms. I had to, because we got to realize, whether it's York's teachings or even religion that we were grown and raised in, it is a serious system of mental indoctrination, and it's powerful because some of us suffer from it on a conscious and a subconscious level. I see a lot of people who try to elevate to higher spiritual paths, even if it's comedic information. I still see the religious overtones in it. People think they're doing something different, but they've basically just taken ancient Egyptian teachings, and they've taken, for an example, Amun-Ra becomes the Most High. I mean, how do you? I've heard people use that term. Heru is another form of Jesus. It's comical to me. It's just like the Black Hebrew Israelites take the Bible and they just covered everybody and made them
like Quetzalcoatl.
We have a question in the chat.
Let's just paint everybody in the Bible black, and that justifies being a Hebrew Israelite and okaying it. And again, I'm just saying that's their perspective, and that's what they choose to accept. So simple answer to the question is, I had to leave all that shit alone, because I realized that was the problem. And like I was saying earlier, we keep getting on all these platforms debating who was first. At the end of the day, bottom line is I could still walk out my house, people still getting shot, killed, drugs running rampant. We're dealing with a pandemic, whether you believe it's a conspiracy.
Right. They're all studying the fake.
We got another question in the chat.
And that's what's so sad that they're all studying the fake, and they don't know they're studying the fake. And
we have another question in the chat.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, somebody said, have you heard of Nature Boy and noticed the York? Have you noticed the York influence?
Yes.
Okay.
So I again, I think we have to question. I don't know if we can directly say York and blame him, but do these people have an effect on York? Yes. Obviously, you can see it, because Nature Boy thought he was. I've seen some of the videos over the years. I didn't even know if he was still around.
Okay, I was requested by several content creators not to run this too long, because we're letting everybody play it on their channel and they don't want to have any issues downloading it. But we're going to hit the 3-hour mark soon, so I'm going to go a little bit beyond that, because it's my interview and I don't want to stop yet. But we're going to slowly wind down. But I had a question and it just flew right out of my devilish head.
But when you bring up people like Nature Boy, that's the sickness that religion and these dogmas, that they initiate, and we can't be surprised about it. Unfortunately, there's going to be more Nature Boys. There's going to be more people like this. Mm-hmm. It's just a reality. Let's call it what it is.
I'm gonna ask you, every ex-Nuwapian or somebody connected to York gets asked this question. Outside of Pickle Man, what is the funniest thing that, it might not have been funny then, but you can look back on it and say, how in the hell did I believe this shit?
The Deros characters and the Flugal rods and the Danacle.
Oh, we hot tonight.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Hey, Mike, real fast, because I gotta step out and pick someone up. I'll be back in 10 minutes. But something I wanted to listen. I was just happy because my girl's Filipino. Everybody's and they speak Ilocano.
Chuck, you're selling out, man. Your girl's Filipino, man. That ain't gonna go over good.
Give a fuck. But look, check this out. No, but I was looking at something, and
by the way, York had a Chinese wife. By the way, let me throw that in there.
Yeah, I heard that.
And then there's a lot of white people in the white.
Yeah. Let me finish this before, because I got to go out. So that I'm going to do an article because I found out where York finally got the image and the folklore about Diwani. That's an old Filipino legend. Yeah, that's an old Filipino legend, and he put it in his book, and that's one of the beings that reside in the interiors of the earth, the Diwani. Right. But I'll be back. I got to run.
Now, keep in mind, when all this stuff was coming out, we didn't have access to the internet like we do now. See, now we can fact check everything. You got to remember, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't all this social media platform. So you had people that were able to get, even Dr. Phil Valentine, they were able to get access to old occult and metaphysical and alchemy books. So then when they would spit this information, we would go, oh shit, that's so deep.
That's deep.
You know what I'm saying? And now we can all fact check this stuff ourselves, whether we agree. See, here's my thing. I may not agree with you, but I'm not going to waste my time and energy fussing, fighting, and debating with you. If your path is working for you and you're getting results, I respect that. But the same thing, if I come with a point of opposition and it works for me, whether you like it or not, that's just what it is.
Hey, don't dispute me. Don't dispute me. Let me live. And that's what people have a problem with, and that's why we have no unity, because people don't respect. Everybody's on a different level. We wake up in different stages, and so we have to learn how to respect each other during our wake ups. And it's hard because you be way out there, and that's why I was telling you and Chuck that one of the things that they don't realize is that York is plagiarized. Most of his stuff came from other people. It's like it's hard to know when you're well studied, like where other people come from, and it's hard for new people coming into the knowledge to realize that a lot of times this stuff is not original. You have to study and you have to research behind people, and that's the whole point of all of this.
I said questions, girl. One more time, and tonight you're gonna be in the chat again.
Okay,
I told you multiple times. I know you get excited,
but I just wanted to tell
I'm quiet.
I'm gonna go on mute.
Even I'm quiet, listening.
But Mike, come to my channel though, because I'm finna drill you, and it's gonna be all good. You know what I'm saying?
Good right there. That didn't sound comfortable at all. That sounded alienish. We got young Pharaoh around here with the Renum spoons.
God.
And
not none of that.
I met floating somewhere at the bottom of the chat. And it's too weird tonight to be talking about stuff like that, honey. Somebody said, did you read the journalist Susan Palmer's 2016 book called Nubian Nation?
No, I have not. I've heard about it, but no, I have not read it.
Have you read Bill Osinski's
yes,
book on Godly?
You have a copy of that. I've read that.
How accurate was that to you?
He did fuck up with a lot of the names. Some of his doctrine references are off. You can tell he got some secondhand information. But as far as his point with the molestation, I think that's the more important thing. But some of his references to the doctrine were very inaccurate. So I can attest to that. Part of it, the way he spelled some things was a little bit out of whack. But the timeline and some, the history of the case and some of that to an extent, the way he explained it was off, but the gist of it, there's obviously some truth there, knowing what you know now. But yeah, I've read that book thoroughly.
Okay. Do we have any? Moses, I'm sorry, I got a brownie in my mouth.
I just want to know, what's two of the greatest books you ever read? What's two of your favorite books you ever read? I read a lot of books, bro. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, what's two of your favorite?
One book that's really good, I would suggest to you guys, if you haven't, Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, Dark Light Consciousness.
Dark Light.
To me, Yeah, Dark Light Consciousness by Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum. He is actually a brother, a clinical psychologist out of Boston University, still practicing. He's traveled the world. He has a lot of experience in left-hand path, Tantra, and African spirituality. And when we're saying the term left-hand path, it's just a term. I know people are going to hear that term. They're automatically going to correlate it to European doctrine. Left-hand path Tantra goes back to the original Dravidians. And the original Dravidians were Black when you go do your research. See, a lot of people, what they think the occult is and all these things that I'm talking about, that's why I say if you go to my channel, some people probably not going to, vibe with it. And that's okay. I really don't care.
I'm going to check it out. I'm going to check it out, bro.
So please don't send me emails wanting to fuss and fight and debate. It's either for you or it's not. It's not. It's cool. But my whole point is that book there, he breaks down so much stuff in there, so many different paths. He talks about the breakdown of neuro and neuromelanin. He also talks about how each individual has the same capacity to create the same amount of brain melanin. But when we're talking about the physical melanin, obviously that's a different story. And even he breaks down in there something that Dr. Jewel Pookrum taught about, how if you're dark skinned, you actually need more sun than somebody who is fair skinned or light skinned, because you absorb more melanin and you need to be in that sun more. So why have they taught dark skinned people to hide from the sun, whereas somebody fair skinned like myself only needs to get small amounts of sunlight to replenish that neuromelanin? Dr. Bynum goes into all that. He confirms a lot of the stuff Dr. Jewel Pookrum has talked about for years in regards to melanin.
I don't think so.
Say it again.
Oh, I was talking to Sat. He said, did you say you knew Leah?
Yeah, I do know Leah. We actually went into visits together to see you.
Up, Muhammad. He ain't browsing no home. I don't mind people asking the same question.
Yeah. No, me and Leah will verify.
Let's move on to where we're going, Queen. We got Mike limited time. Let's move on to the questions that we're asking and the ones that you haven't reached. That's it.
I just asked him the question.
So let's move on to another one.
To make sure I'm not missing anything. Give me a second.
Left hand, right hand. All right. So let's go with another question. There's another question in the chat. Something.
That's what I'm looking for. Give me a second. It's a lot of comments to go to find a question on it.
And by the way, let me throw something in there with that sun. That's one of the keys. If you notice, everybody that's so-called they're claiming has COVID, everything that shows up when they get tested is a severe deficiency of vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
They were trying to keep us in lockdown. Think about it. They wanted to keep us in the house, away from being outside, away from being in the sun.
Mike didn't finish the question.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was 2 books. Sometimes I talk out loud when I'm reading the chat. He asked you which 2 books. You already named.
Yeah, so the first one I would say Dark Light Consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
By Yogi what? You said by Yogi.
Oh, you're talking about the plagiarized books.
No, Uda just asked you what would the 2 top books be that you read.
Okay, yeah. That first one, Dark Light Consciousness by Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum. Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, Bynum.
Thank you.
Okay.
That is a great book for those that have not read it. Another, I would say, influential book, which to me is more of an occult book, probably a little more unorthodox. Any books written by, I know Brother Panic has mentioned some of his work, Don Webb, The 7 Faces of Darkness. That's more or less getting into Egyptian Hecker, or what I was talking about earlier. That is another great book. But again, remember, this is going to go against a lot of the traditional stuff. But in essence, when you do the research, you'll see. But The 7 Faces of Darkness by Don Webb, that was also another book that recollects and stand out to me. But there's many others. But if you're just going to ask me for 2 right out the gate, that would be 2 I would definitely look at.
But do you believe that Egypt, that a lot of, see, Aleister Crowley, so let me give you a frame of thinking.
Sure.
Then we're going to go into Egyptology, which I believe had been infiltrated and then spread to the world. So I believe that what most people are following, like the African spirituality and all of that, is Aleister Crowley.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. When you talk about
right back to that same question, girl,
let me just say this.
Hop on down, baby.
You got to understand, Aleister Crowley whatever your perspective on him is or not, when you talk about Thelema, the Order Templi Orientis, his whole order, it was based on Egyptian teachings infused with his personal beliefs. But also understand, he claims he received the book of the law from a being called Alawas while he was in ancient Egypt in the pyramids. Then you also had somebody who came behind him, and no disrespect to Bobby Hemmett. Bobby Hemmett put a video out he said that Alawas was a black man on a spaceship on the way back to Earth to save black people. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but you can go pull the video up. So what I'm saying tends to happen. This is what I do when it comes to Crowley or any teachers. You got to take out of it what you can resonate with, and whatever you don't, just leave it alone. Because you can look at some of Crowley's teachings. There are some things in there that just are common sense across the board. So this is what in my opinion, this is what a true master does. A true teacher, a true seeker of knowledge. We've got to learn, regardless of who the author is or the source. We need to take out what resonates for us to develop our own personal path of self-mastery, and whatever don't, just leave it alone. Not everybody's going to agree with that, because everybody needs to be defined in some ideology. I don't care about any of that. So there are some things with Crowley I can resonate with. Not all. There's some shit I think is just completely ridiculous. And so I'm in agreement with you. But really, when you look at Crowley and you study his degrees, he basically was highly influenced by Hermetic philosophy. It's obviously in there. All you got to do is read his stuff. But your perspective on it, it's personal, whether you agree with it or not. That's where you got to make your own choices. But yeah.
So like based on Crowley though, right? On Aleister Crowley, right? Based on him, he had a lot of influence. He also had a lot of influence in a lot of parts of the world, music, all of that, the Beatles and many great artists like that as well, right? So you said you do agree with some things and you don't agree with some. Right? That's how anything is in life, right? But could you say something that you did agree with when it comes to Crowley, if be it little or big, whatever it is, something?
Right. When he said the main thing that I agree with Crowley, your will, that's the law. Your will, right? That's what the book of law is about. Do thy will, right? That is the true law. What does that mean? Be your own master. Be your own God. Be the ruler over your own spiritual sovereignty. So we all walk around talking this shit. I'm a god and I'm a goddess. But what does that really mean? It doesn't mean something spooky. It means be in control. To be a god or a goddess means you have made a conscious choice or decision to control your spiritual destiny, not follow somebody else. So that's what Crowley, to do thy will is the sole rule of the law. That's simply just.
You really can't help yourself. I put you on mute. You asking questions in the back chat. I can't. Girl, just drop down for the night and give Mike your email and ask him to come over, please, baby, please.
Yeah, so I mean that's probably the root of what I would say that Crowley had right. Now, are there some things I think are absurd? He had some issues, most definitely. There is a lot of reported incidences. The man was a bit disturbed, in trouble. His approach to his person, he had a lot of personal life issues. But again, it takes a disciplined individual to separate those things. Like I said, you can use the R. Kelly thing and even Dr. York. Don't front like there's not some things there that Dr. York said are just across the board, just common sense, basic things. Is there some outlandish shit there? Yes. But are you disciplined enough to have that mindset? Not everybody is, because they feel like they need to belong to some Mickey Mouse club or some group or some organization. I got to be this or I need to be that, because if I don't fit in with what everybody else is doing, then I'm not part of the Mickey Mouse Club. See, I don't care about the Mickey Mouse Club. People ain't going to agree with my perspective, not everybody, but you can't measure me up to your standards. What are you going to measure me up to? Egyptian knowledge, Nuapo? I don't succumb to any of that. I don't need to defend my stance on those perspectives because I've left all that shit alone. I don't care about it.
Hada says, do you think your experiences with York was to bear witness for the day?
What? Say it again. I didn't hear the last part.
Do you think your experiences with York was to bear witness for today?
I believe everything we've gone through serves the purpose to get us to where we are now. Everything, not just York. I get so many people that come to me and say, oh, I wish I would have known what I know now. I wish I didn't have to go through Christianity. I wish I didn't have to be a Muslim for all those years. I say, no, you're wrong. You needed to. Because that learning and that experience gives you a better understanding. We can never regret. I don't look at any of it as wasting time, whether it's my experience in the York movement, whether it's my short experience as a young child being a Catholic. I experimented with studying all of these different things. I look at them as all steps, yes, overall, to get me to where I'm at right now. Okay. So yes, I do believe he was one, or the movement was one integral part of it. Not all of it. Look, again, like I said, being a god or goddess is being responsible for your actions, your successes. Here's the tough part where people struggle. Your failures. See, we don't want to embrace our failures. We want to blame somebody else.
It's already gone. You just can't see it. Oh, sorry. You just can't see it when you remove stuff on the restream side.
Right.
It still show like it's there.
Right in the back. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
So what I'm saying is, to be responsible in that context is to also take responsibility for your failures. We don't do that. See, we need to, when you man up, and there's a thing in the occult called shadow work. And shadow work is really uncovering the hidden aspects of ourselves that we tend to avoid and don't want to deal with. What do I mean by that? So I'm clear. A lot of us want to save the world and be a part of all these movements, but we're disturbed on the inside. We got emotional problems, family problems, relationship problems, money problems. So we want to neglect all that. We think by hiding in some doctrine or dogma that that's all going to go away. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't go away. All that resistance does is create a stronger, that persistence and resistance becomes stronger. So if you got a lot of serious personal, mental, and emotional issues, and then you start getting involved in some spiritual system, you think you're going to meditate them away and do all these spiritual things, you're fooling yourself. It doesn't work like that. So when you start to really embrace all aspects of yourself, the good and the bad, right? You might have temper issues, patience issues. I struggle with some of those things, okay? And it's a work in progress, but I can admit that. Admit what you got wrong. Anybody that says they ain't got nothing wrong with themselves, that's their first problem right there, their first lie. You just lied. Everybody got some shit that they dealing with. I don't care who you are. I don't care how together you appear on the outside. I don't care how well your life is going. Money might be going good. I can say all those things. But guess what? There's always some work to be done on ourselves. When you're dealing with some external doctrine that you're worshiping things, that your focus is following rules, regulations, and guidelines, you can never really be you. That's the problem. So you must get rid of all of those things first before we can grow. That's my approach. Is it going to work for everybody? No. But I look at all those experiences, to that question. That's a great question. I look at all those experiences as necessary steps to get me where I'm at now, most definitely.
That's real. But look, being that you study like different ways of life, right? Because the normal ways of life or religion that a person would follow would be like Christian or Baptist. Like my mom was like a Baptist and stuff like that, right? But when you start to venture out into other ways of life, beyond like God body and stuff like that, when you start to understand stuff, because like my page is called One Community, Kemet, being the Black land. I named it that because I wanted to build a Black land on the internet, right? A Black place that we can go, not just based on just Kemet, right? The meaning of it, right? But we tend to get romanticized things like Kemet. But after being a part of something, a person that was highly into Kemeticism and things like that, because when you start practicing like rituals and things like that and all these things, right? How do you feel about people practicing ancient religions in the present day right now? Because like a lot of us are going, like people want to be like believing in Egypt and Kemeticism, right? Some people practice the religion, the rituals, some people don't. But a lot of times now, like if a person got dreads and this and that, now they preaching this and that, now they got some followers now. Or if a sister got beads on and she got like a nose ring or like a little ring or some shit, and she got the dreads or some shit, that she fits this image of something. So like, how do you feel about Kemeticism, people that practice the Kemetic belief and ancient ways of life being practiced in this modern, after being around a person like you that was deep into every kind of way of life?
Right. No, man, that's a good question. I'm gonna say this. I got no problem with anybody's personal spiritual beliefs or practices, old, young, or new, as long as you're not enforcing it on somebody else. Let me just establish that. That's important. I don't even have a problem with Christians. If it's my take is, if it's making you a better person and you're living a productive life, but you're not trying to force your bullshit on me, I'm cool with it. Respect to you. The problem comes when you cross a line and you start making statements like, this is the only way. This is the exclusive truth. Now I'm going to have to rip into your ass because now I see you have a certain mindset or ideology. Now, when it comes to Kemeticism, I would say this. I wouldn't even use the term Kemet, in my opinion. I'm not saying that in any derogative way to your channel, because that still connects you with Judaism and Hebrew. The reason why I say that, because if you understand the word Kem or Kemet or Cam comes from that's the Hebrew word for the prophet Ham. You know this.
I understand that too. Yeah,
right. So I'm just saying, if you're explaining it, and I understand like Kem or Cam, right, and it ties into the Black land, I'm all for that as long as it's making you. You're growing, you're seeing results in your life where I always ask somebody this that practices a spiritual path, and this is a great question, brother. If you can say, I came into this 4 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can go, let me gauge where I'm at now. And you look back and go, spiritually, I've evolved and grown in knowledge. Mentally, my mind is in tune, and emotionally, my emotions are in check. My mind, I've gained the knowledge and the wisdom. I'm in a sound mind and sound body. Physically, there's a physical aspect to it. Has it improved my perspective on health, diet, and exercise? Okay. And then also financially, that's one thing we don't include, because most systems talk about, I know everybody now is on this crypto kick and everybody's talking about money, but be careful because there's a lot of crypto hustlers out there now. So what I'm trying to say is, if you can honestly say spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, you've evolved on a higher level, I don't care what it is. I can say, power to you, keep growing, keep doing those things. So I respect that. I like a lot of those spiritual systems that you mentioned. And again, I study an old system in Egypt that most people won't really address because they're not going to agree with it. Mm-hmm. Look, Egyptian Heka. The Egyptians were the greatest Black magicians and sorcerers. The coming forth.
I had a question.
Magic. I mean, you need to understand that, but nobody wants to talk about it because we want to talk about Horus as the sun, and Horus, when he sun comes over the horizon and Horus walks on the water. Fuck all that shit. I don't care about none of that shit, because none of that is going to do anything for me to help me grow. That's my perspective. That's all.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. But it's a
good.
good.
Hada has a question.
Yeah.
She said, very few people have experiences of being in a cult. When did you realize that you were in a cult?
Man, that's the question I was waiting for all night. That's the question I was waiting for all night. I was waiting when somebody was going to ask that. Yeah. Here's how it happened for me. I got so tired of all the deceptiveness and fuckery that was going on. And then really and I'm going to tell you how I had my aha moment. Literally, it was an aha moment, but I can tell you the things that led up to it. I started to see the deceptiveness in the case. I uncovered things that we've been talking about all night. I started to see how York pitted people against people in visits. If you were in a visit, he would talk shit about people that weren't there. And then word got back to me, he would talk shit about me when I wasn't there. All these things were a culmination. And I got up, I remember, I was still in New York at the time. This was 2010, early 11. I woke up, sat up at the edge of my bed, and I said to myself, I can't do this no more. That was it. It was a buildup from all those moments. And I remember the night before, I was at a lodge meeting in Brooklyn Bookstore, and Mentu Hotep, who some of you guys know as Sadiq, was running the store at the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember he had asked me to come to sit in the East as a past master, which I did. And I remember as the meeting was going on, it started to turn into Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 that I zoned out and everybody sounded like Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. That's when I realized I'm not here spiritually, mentally, and emotionally anymore. I can't do this. And then that next morning I got up and sat up. And I remember that feeling I had in my chest that I can't do this no more. That's it. I don't want no part of it, because it was going against what I personally stood for. And that's it. And like I said, I want to make this clear. I ain't got no animosity. I made these conscious decisions to be a part of that organization for years. Okay. So I don't hold York responsible or anything, but I also made a conscious decision to leave. And people just got to understand that in my case and other people who have a similar situation like me. That's it. It's that simple. We don't need to make this complex. People always, oh, you left. Oh, why is it everybody that left? All of a sudden now you got a problem with Dr. York. You're not looking at it right. Okay. You're not looking at it. We didn't have a problem in it when we were engaged in that mindset. It's that simple. But we're making this more complex sometimes. So that was it. I had an aha moment, and it was a buildup of all those things. I just couldn't do it no more. That was it. I just needed to change.
Okay. Mike, we don't want to keep you entirely too long, so you're going to want to come back.
Yeah, about 20 more minutes, so we can wrap it up. 20 minutes.
Okay. So do we have some semi-short questions from the panel? Udo, you got anything else? I know Chuck stepped out.
Yeah,
Chuck. I didn't ask her questions for the night.
No, I came back. I'm back.
I would say this, my brother. Right, Mike? I would say this. First of all, I want to say I commend you. Just the growth, I feel a very genuine spirit from you. I feel a real purity from everything that you're saying. This was one of the best, dialogues that I've seen or been a part of on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to tell you that first and foremost. Very informative, learned a lot. I try to learn in this thing right here. That's why I was trying to tell people to ask questions that we really can learn from instead of just asking basic questions that we can always talk about on another day.
Right.
So I do salute you and, your family. I want to say condolences on your wife because I did hear you mention that, because it just sees a lot of the growth in you to be able to come and speak on how you speaking. And I like to even speak with you further and learn more things about the things that you think or believe or whatever, because we all learn from each other. And I do believe we learn from
exactly. And I think the most important thing going forward is we need to understand we have to be able to have the maturity to agree to disagree. And that's okay if that's the case. If we can do that, if we can walk away and not be up in our feelings, then regardless, we can really start accomplishing things. Because guess what? Bottom line is this. There will never be a day where we all wake up and we all agree on everything. Anybody that sells that pipe dream to you is under a delusional mindset. Bottom line is this. So some of us are tribal by nature. Why is it sometimes we can walk in a room and we just don't vibe with somebody? That's that tribal blood that runs through our veins. And this is why we can all reflect over years when we try to get projects done. Why is there always that one negative person that always seems to ruin shit? Because we approach things with this delusional mindset. So we have to be able to have intelligent conversation and agree to disagree. And that's cool. But the persons that don't want to, especially the fanatical religious person, I just don't bother with it no more because it's draining and it's too time consuming. But let me make this clear. Don't mistake that as a weakness because if you push the wrong button, sometimes you got to pull a can of whoop ass out on somebody. I got to be honest with you.
Sometimes
that's in special cases. Yeah.
Special case. But QI had one question before she went. She was saying, do you believe in negative or positive ions?
Great question. Now, here's the thing. First of all, I don't believe in anything. I believe only in what I can confirm as a reality to me. Now, let me explain. Positive and negative is the polarity of the same things. Because let me give you an example. Let me explain something just so people ain't confused. We can place an object in the center of a room and we all could be standing around in a circle and look at that object. Everybody's going to have a perspective of what they see and don't see. That's number one.
True.
Let me give you another example. I can make a statement about morals where I can say, for an example, what I said earlier, right? I said, look, pedophiles, I believe, should be castrated, shot, and killed. Then somebody can come along and go, that's negative because that's committing murder, right? So here we get what I'm basically saying. Positive and negative is a matter of perception. What is that perception based on? Based on your level of knowledge, learning, and spirituality is going to affect your perception on what you're describing as positive and negative. Now, if you go into the Kabbalion, the 3 initiates, the 7 principles of Tahuti, read the polarity. It breaks down that those are just vibrational degrees of the same thing. I don't believe in any positive and negative is perception, just like this whole devil God concept that we're still all struggling with. I'm not going to get into that tonight, but really there's no difference between the two. That's getting into a whole nother ballgame. That's opening a whole nother can of worms. All we're looking at is polarities of the same thing. And based on how our perception and understanding of that, based on our upbringing, our spiritual path, if we are influenced by religions and dogmas, that's going to affect our perception of what we are classifying as positive or negative. This is why people argue. This is why you can't talk to certain people, because I have no problem with them having their own perception, but I have a problem when you have a problem with me having my own perception. That's all. So when we say positive and negative ions, to me, that's a matter of perception. because I do believe you need both of what we're labeling positive and negative, because what we're labeling as, see, when you work magic, even in ancient Egypt, the Egyptians taught a good black magician, spiritual sorcerer that the ancient Egyptians knew how to tap into that aggressive energy when need be. It's not, energy is just something that can be manipulated. And a good spiritualist knows the who, when, how, and why, how to use it, when you might need more lighter or more laid back forces or spiritual energies that they call positive. So to me, that's personal, and it's a matter of perception, how you perceive things, because that's going to affect your upbringing. All those things affect. So my question I always point to, truth is personal. Is there such thing as the undisputed absolute truth? Only until you raise yourself to the realization of it. Nothing is a reality until you confirm it for yourself. Point blank. I don't care what anybody says, because somebody can spit a fact and they say this is truth. It's a fact. Well, if I haven't raised myself up to the realization of it, it's not a fact or reality to me. You understand? Until I have that experience. I may never have that experience, but until I get to that point, then I can actually agree, because I've had a similar experience. So if somebody comes out in any of these groups or movements and says, I speak, we got everybody on YouTube now that's channeling. This thing cracks me up. I spoke to the ancestors. You didn't speak to my motherfucking ancestors because you ain't giving me no names, right? When the pandemic came out, everybody was experts. It's the 5G. The 5G is what's causing mutated cells in the body that's creating the pandemic virus. The ancestors told me about the pandemic, but how come the ancestors didn't tell you it was coming before it came? See, that's how we got to question these people. I heard everybody and their mother on the internet talking about this. The ancestors told me this about coronavirus and this and that. Well, how come you didn't get the heads up before it came? Then I'd be impressed. Then I'd say, you on to some shit there. I agree with you. Where's all the 5G people now? Y'all remember when this first came out? Everybody was saying 5G was the cause of the coronavirus. Where are they all now? I don't hear nobody talking about this 5G.
None of them. But yeah, I don't mean to take you off your soapbox right now, but we got a couple more questions. You said you had about 20 more minutes.
Sure.
So Hada said, what is the most important lessons you learned from the York experience?
The most important lesson I've learned from the York experience is to not follow and be anybody's puppet ever again. To be your own person, to have your own stance and approach, and to be, most importantly, to be in control of your sovereignty. When I say sovereignty, I ain't talking about no moral shit. I'm talking about your spiritual sovereignty. Be the sole governor and controller and ruler of that. Do not put your spirituality in the hands of any other person. That's what I've learned, because doing that will lead you down the wrong road.
Beautiful. That's on a previous stream.
It'll lead you down a path of following and a path of destruction. That's what I've learned.
Okay, Karu Ware says, how come the conscious community hasn't en masse given tangibles to our communities that are in need if they are of higher intellect?
Say it again.
They said, how come the conscious community hasn't en masse given tangibles to our communities that are in need if they are of higher intellect?
Okay. All right. So this is just I can't speak for them, and I don't want to, but I can only tell you from what I see and my perspective on it. I just think a lot of it is just bickering back and forth. And again, that was my whole point from the beginning. Where is the work? Where is the contribution? Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I will say about the Black Hebrew Israelites, whether you agree with them or not, they are doing some positive things out on the streets and in their communities, whether you agree with them or not. See, to me, that's what it's all about. Look, you could be a Hebrew Israelite, Kemetic, occult, left, whatever, but that doesn't mean we can't come together on issues that need to be addressed, period. That don't mean we can't go feed homeless people. What does that got to do? I can't hook up with you because you have a different spiritual belief in me. So I think part of that problem a lot of it involves money, power, and let's be real. YouTube and social media platforms can be a great thing because we can reach mass people like we're doing now, but they could also be a destructive thing because we got a lot of YouTube people that want to be superstars. And if YouTube went away tomorrow, a lot of people would be out of business. Let's just keep it real. And don't sit here and talk about the devil and the white man, this and that, when you're using the white man's platform to broadcast your shit. See, people don't want to address those things because we're on, whether we want to accept it or not. This is not our platform. These streaming things that we do,
we must be doing really good.
I know that may not be what people want to hear, but let's keep it real. And the bottom line is, I think what's caused a lot of those things to the question is greed, money, power, selfishness. When you talk about giving tangibles in our communities that are in need, let's say such as going to areas where they need food, helping the homeless, drug infested communities. I've always said this for years. They need to have community centers, more career centers to show these young people coming up how, whether it's education, career, job fields, show them how they can do that. These are tangible things that's going to help people. But no, we're more concerned on having debates and arguments over the Hebrew Israel, the Hebrew doctrine, and to me, that's all just a waste of time. But that's the reason why there's more problems, because everybody's got an agenda. Everybody thinks that their doctrine is right. My doctrine is right. And I'm going to go all out to have an argument and a debate with you to prove it. To me, that's why we're not getting the tangibles, the things that we need. There's nothing there of substance. And let me say this. This is important, okay? You can't help the whole world and everybody else if you can't help yourself and you're not right yourself. That's why shadow work is important. So if I'm all fucked up in here and in here, how in the world am I going to go out in the world and save the world and help everybody? Think about that for a minute. We don't do that. We think I think a lot of it is tongue, to be honest with you. A lot of it is tongue. That's just my perspective on it. But I can't speak for quote unquote every conscious movement. And I'm not going to try to do that. That would be wrong.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, are there any more? Who are the current top most popular Nuwabians? Like it's a game show.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm outside. The only Nuwapians I affiliate with are ex-Nuwapians right now. And it's small, like Brother Marcus Mays. We stay in touch a little bit on Facebook. Brother Chuck, we stay in touch here and there. I'm pretty much out of that circle. I don't really mess with anybody in that circle. And again, I'm gonna tell you why. In part of my shadow work, I had to realize you have to address things in your life that need to be cut off completely. That's fact. I had to look at my social circles, things I was doing in life. And when you start cutting off dead weight and dead things you're doing, guess what? All doors open up for you. Finances, money, opportunities. You grow spiritually. And since I left all that shit, things have taken off to a whole nother level, because I realized it was all that stagnated energy that was holding me down. Because my mother used to say something to me that was so real. You are the company you keep. Keep that in mind. You are the company you keep. If you hang around unsuccessful, derelict, low-life people, at some point you will become a derelict and a low-life, and you will become unsuccessful, okay? And I'm not saying money is everything, because it's not, but we're not supposed to be poor. We shouldn't be struggling. Show me one broke pharaoh in ancient Egypt. So the first thing I do when I talk with Kemetic brothers, you talk about ancient Egypt and we were gods and goddesses, and not to judge you, but if I look at you and you're struggling, show me a broke pharaoh. What pharaoh in ancient Egypt was broke? Brokey pharaoh, whoever. I mean, show me. It doesn't exist. So my thing is, I base people's growth and development on you should be a living example of what you teach. So if you're talking all this God and goddess stuff in ancient Egypt, I need to see that reflection in your character, your life, your personality, and the results and everything that evolves around you. But if you're living in your mother's basement, you don't have a car, and I'm not judging nobody, and you want to talk to me about how to invest my money, I got to look at you as a complete joke. Okay? If you want to give me health advice and you're coughing all the time and you want to tell me what herbs to take and you're sick all the time, I got to look at you as a joke. You're supposed to be a living example of what you teach, and it should reflect in your life, your character, your personality, and how you carry yourself. If I don't see that, it just says to me, you read a lot of books and you can regurgitate a lot of knowledge. Any one of us can do that. I don't care.
I beat you to it, Tarnoonan. I got first dibs. Tarnoonan said to tell you he needs those letters.
Yeah, as you see, Tarnoonan, I have to, when I tell you, when I left a little bit earlier, and these are just some of the, I got this stuff in boxes. And I have to really go through it. So I'll go through it. It's not that I'm trying to disregard Brother Tarnoon. I know he's been asking.
Can you type in the chat so I can give you a wrench so you can drop your email?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and I hit that private chat thing, right? I got it.
No, Yeah, you can put your email in the private chat, and I'll put it in the If
Okay,
you want to,
I'm gonna do that right now.
You have to go into the main chat, but you can put it in the private chat. And
I'll put it in the private, and then I guess you can just transfer it there.
Yeah.
There you go. I just put it in there. Yeah, that was.
There it is, Mod. Start circulating.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming on tonight, Mike, and answering these questions. Treehouse, let's give Mike a treehouse thank you. Let's get around the ones in the chat for this wonderful interview that he didn't have to come over here and do. Thank all of the treehouse watchers, pocket watching with JT, Mike B, Information Man show came up, and of course Chuck Morgan. We are getting that cartoon started. Chuck Morgan and the Wapian Hunters. Yes. I think I messed the name. I wanted to go with Chuck Morgan, Nuwapian Hunter, but it's Chuck Morgan and the Nuwapian something or other.
Chuck Morgan, he on a Nuwap. You already know.
Udo, are we having the after party at the treehouse or over there at the community?
You want to do it, man, bro? You gonna reset it? I'm already live.
I'm gonna reset it because everybody ready for this to drop so they can go ahead and pull it down and mirror it. So I know you watch it. Just remember, you ain't allowed. None of your channels nor your affiliates. While I'm a bitch, how about y'all retract y'all words, give me an apology, and tell Taharka to take that copyright strike off my channel? Then I'll think about giving you access. Until then, that description box gonna stay the same, my dude.
Big fact. All right. Yeah, man. I just want to congratulate Mike again, man. I appreciate you, brother. Like I said, man, I learned a lot from you right now in this sitting, and I look forward to talking to you, man. I'm gonna email you too, my brother.
I do. I want to say this. I appreciate your intelligent questions, man. I really do. And again, I'm not trying to stroke your ego or nothing like that. I see you come from a place of thought when you're asking your questions. I really do. And I really think if we all took that approach, we could really have intelligent conversation, man. So I do appreciate you and your method of questioning.
I appreciate you, my brother. I appreciate you.
No problem, beautiful. Chuck, Aku says, are you gonna be mirroring this up to your channel? Which I think the question is yes, but you know,
yes.
You in the chat. Okay, I forgot. You in the chat.
Of course.
All right, man. You guys have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Mike.
I'm gonna go ahead and end this one here, but don't nobody leave that want to stay for the after party. Chuck, are you staying for the after party?
Actually, I got a house full of people and getting ready to have dinner, but I'll be on later on when I go to work.
So at noon, and if you want to jump up, that's cool. But yeah, we're gonna end this here for now. Thank you again to our guests and panelists tonight. We had Pocket Watching with JT, Chuck Morgan, and the Information Man Show. This is Trip C's Treehouse, where we always keep things swinging, and we out, and we'll be